This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Crypto nana, exit liquidity. Huddle nana, dump it all. Exit liquidity. Dump it all. Exit liquidity. Dump it all. From the day we arrive on the blockchain and blinking step into the trade, there's more to lose than can ever be won, more to dump than can ever be saved. Influencers, tweets, and the noobs all follow, buying high, selling low what a game. But the boomers know, and Sailor, he knows that the dump is coming. It's all the same. It's the circle of exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and FOMO, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity. Some of us fall by the wayside, and some of us soar to the stars. But the influencers always win with the Lambos and their cars. So beware of the bump and the inevitable dump, for the cycle continues and the news get wrecked. Exit liquidity, dump it all. Exit liquidity, dump it all. Crypto nana, exit liquidity, dump it all. Nana, dump it It's the exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and FOMO, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity.
fun. Still, my favorite song to start the space with. I'm never gonna get tired of doing that. Um, so welcome everyone. We're still just getting last couple people up on board. If you wanted to speak, obviously request to speak. We're more than happy to let a bunch of people up. Um, Now, just before we get the actual thing started, um, I kind of was inspired by a few um, Thorchain discussions on this kind of thing. Although this subject has been going on for a very long time, so I do remember, especially the early days in crypto, this was a hot button topic. But I figured I might as well do it. Anyway, welcome everyone. As we're getting everyone else up, before we hit the actual theme song and stuff, just want to say hi to obviously QuickSwap as our pinch in co-host, and as well as of course Zano, our consistent co-host. Uh, Very happy to have you guys here. Always bring positive energy to the discussion, and this subject should apply to you guys a lot as well, because I know there's a lot of like, you know, in the privacy, the saltier aspects of the privacy space. There's a little bit of a, discussion on that kind of stuff. So it'll be funny. But I also want to mention our, I guess, co-host in absentia, so to speak. Our sponsored co-host for this is Edge Wallet. Edge Wallet is a multi-coin crypto wallet, open source self-custody wallet for the people who care deeply about privacy and simple usability, with no personal information collected and extensive privacy asset support. Edge puts the power of crypto right where it belongs, in your hands. I'd like to have them go shill it more directly, but they're doing whatever they're doing. We'll get them back. And um, Edge supports Xano, right? Is that correct, Xano folks?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Yes. So Edge supports Xano, obviously, Dash, Bitcoin, a whole bunch of other things. I'm very happy. I've known Paul and the Edge team for many, many years, and I personally, it's my number one multi-coin wallet. Obviously, I use Dash Pay for most of my spending type stuff, but um, as far as multi-coin, it's really great. So just want to give a shout out to them. They're great people. Let me see. We've got a couple other requests. If I invited you somewhere else, by the way, and I don't recognize you up here, feel free to ping me wherever I request you to say, hey, let me on. Uh, Nicole, how's it going? Are you ready to launch the intro song and get this thing going? What do you think?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, cool. And we will eventually update our song and get everything smoother. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, we still have this banger from the very first episode back when we co-hosted with Litecoin. But we'll get everything else fixed eventually. So hit it. Let's go.
Gather around the quorum, voices in the fray. Dashing like coin lead, Joel lights the way. From the chains we forge to the dreams we chase. Crypto Quorum live, it's an open space. Maximalist stand tall, multi-chainers ignite. 2025's the showdown, who's wrong, who's right. Aaron Day's got a vision, rocks bringing the fire. Digi bite and shape shift, lifting it higher. Crypto Quorum, hear the sound. Voices rising from the crowd. Talk it out, break it down. In this space, we're unbound. From the blocks to the stars we fly. Crypto Quorum, you and I. Late runnings with Cody, Justin Bonds in play. Sal the Agorist stirs it up his way. Kurt Walker's dropping truth, Johnny Law's on beat. Statues in the pack making the heat. Maximalistic, multi-chainers expand. One chain to rule them all. A wide open land, no gatekeepers here. Just the truth we seek. Crypto Quorum, where the future speaks. Crypto Quorum, hear the sound. Voices rising from the crowd. Talk it out, break it down. In this space, we're unbound. From the blocks to the stars we fly. die. Hash it out, stake your claim. No two visions are the same. From the cold to the core, we fight, shining through in the crypto night. Crypto Quorum, here to sell. Voices rising from the crowd. Talk it out, break it down. In this space, we're unbound. From the blocks to the stars we fly. Crypto Quorum, you and I. Tune in. Join the crew, the stage is set for you. Maxi or multi, wherever you stand. Crypto Quorum's the pulse of the land. Tune in, join the crew, the stage is set for you. Maxi or multi, wherever you stand. Crypto Quorum's the pulse of the land. Tune in, join the crew. The stage is set for you. Maxi or multi, wherever you stand. Crypto Quorum's the pulse of the land.
That one's my
And
favorite.
yes, I have to say, as far as actual quality of the song and something, I think that's definitely my favorite. But I am a deeply unserious person, and therefore the circle of exit liquidity just always hits the spot for me. I don't know why. It sets it off to like a, I think it's a good tension breaker. Start out the space with a little of that, and then we just go into a little bit more serious. Just put everyone at ease. But while you're chatting, might as well introduce yourself as the honorary jump in co-host. Show quick swap for a second. Might as well with all the help that they've been giving us.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Nicole. I started off in crypto as a crypto journalist, and after doing that for a couple of years, I transitioned to work for Lunar Digital Assets, which is a venture fund. And QuickSwap was one of the projects that we incubated and continued to work with really closely because our CEO was one of the founders or a co-founder of QuickSwap. So if you hear echoing, that's actually me on the QuickSwap handle too, from a different device. I tried to mute it, but it doesn't let you when you're a co-host. So QuickSwap is a really fast DEX. Trades typically execute in about 4 seconds. QuickSwap is on Polygon first, but is now on additional chains, and it's about to launch on Base. And yeah, like I said, 4 second swaps. It's a DEX, so you always retain custody of your funds. And being that I work for an incubation agency and a marketing agency, I'm very much in favor of blockchains marketing themselves.
Yes, particularly if they've been thoroughly audited.
Yeah,
But
of course.
yes, um, in jokes, of course. Zano, why don't you guys go next? Actually, let me. Nicole sort of like um, guessed the question. It's like telepathy here that I was going to ask, which is introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and then just as quickly, like a one sentence, but pretty much yes or no. Should blockchains, like protocol level, should protocols market themselves, like paid marketing? So, Zano, go ahead.
Hi guys, nice to be here. So my name is Gonzalo. I'm the community manager for Sano. I always been a huge fan of privacy cryptos. I've been using them for necessity to just live my life, deal with capital control. So they have a special place in my heart, and so that's why I recently began involving myself with Sano, which is a layer one that takes privacy technology like CryptoNote and expands it to other use cases beyond digital cash. So like private decentralized applications and confidential assets. And yes, I think protocols should market themselves, hopefully, because that's my job.
Yeah. So your appeal is please don't fire me. Makes sense. All right. Quai Network. Same thing for you guys. Say who you are, what you do, and in a word, should protocols market themselves?
I guess I'll jump in here, or do you want the quiet account? I think I don't know who we actually have on the quiet account.
It's okay. It's a mystery. Well, hopefully they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Why don't you go first, and then
Alan can
also go.
Yeah, I'm Dr. K. I'm the co-founder and CTO. Quiet Network. So in the blockchain space for about 13 years. At least as a hobbyist, full time for 8. 7 of which I've been working on in one form or another. Quiet Network, which is meant to be a scalable proof of work chain that can 50,000 plus transactions per second to actually function as money. So maybe kind of like a similar goal, Dash, I guess. Yeah. And should blockchains market themselves? Absolutely. At the end of the day, there's really 2 things that give blockchains value. One is utility. One is future expected value. Or that's money, I should say. Blockchains want to function as money. That really defines their success. So, as the CTO, my job is to maximize the utility, and then marketing is really trying to maximize future expected value. So,
Yeah, perfect. Alan, do you want to chime in, and then we go to Rock?
Yeah, gladly. Alan from the Quai team here, one of the co-founders of the protocol. As Dr. K said, Quai is a scalable proof of work system with a unique crypto energy dollar. So focused in the realm of payments and all things being a global monetary system. And in the early days, it's definitely early to market, cultivate that user base, and get distribution. I see crypto really as a startup industry still, and we're all building startups within that startup industry. So takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of marketing, and reaching new users for crypto to fulfill its true potential. So excited to talk on the space about all things marketing. It's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense to me. Who did Rock get rugged? Anyway, Rock can chat whenever he's back. But I guess next down the list then would be Kenton. How's it going, my friend? Why don't you say who you are, what you do, and should a protocol market itself?
Good, thanks. Yes, a protocol should. I'm a node operator on Thorchain, and I've actually it's been kind of quite the topic in the Thorchain community for a while now. And so a few months ago, I kind of took it upon myself to start looking into marketing and develop some kind of plan to market and promote Thorchain. So yes, I think protocols should, if they want to make money. If they want the token to go up in value, and if they want to get fees, if they want to get users, yes, you have to do marketing.
Cool, makes sense. Rock, now that you're back, why don't you go, and then we'll go Crypto Sailor next.
I'm getting notification that my connection is lost. Can you guys hear me?
I can for sure.
Yes.
Okay,
We can.
perfect. Yeah, I would say, yeah. So I guess it's important to note like my history. So yeah, I'm the CEO of Lunar Digital Assets, and we're a venture studio and like hybrid incubation marketing firm. So we have full on marketing team, graphic designers. I don't even know how many. We've probably got like 7 or 8 graphic designers. We've got an animation studio. We've got a PR department. A whole team of writers, including Nerd Girl here is one of our best writers. So yeah, I mean, I would say marketing is sadly, and I say this as someone who does marketing, sadly, sometimes more important than the tech or anything else, and it shouldn't be like that. But in reality, I mean, let's look at it as an example. Cardano. They didn't actually have an ecosystem for years, right? Like there was no chain, there was no, it was for a long time, it was just a dream, right? And how do you achieve that dream is through marketing. And so luckily for Cardano, I've had my problems with, Hoskinson, talking trash on Bitcoin. But I was very excited about Cardano and their research approach for a long time. And now they've actually been able to take their marketing and community that was able to propel their token to these heights, and then now parlay that kind of equity they built in community and marketing, and parlay that into actually building stuff. And now they're actually building stuff. And it's cool to see that Cardano didn't it felt for a long time like they were going to be like an EOS where they raise all this money, there's all this hype, and then they don't actually deliver anything. But now I would say, even though I don't like Hoskinson's comments about Bitcoin, as you guys might imagine, I would give them credit that they're actually using, they're putting all that money and those resources in community to work. So yeah, I think marketing matters a lot. We'll say that like at different times in the market, marketing, could be less effective or not as good of an ROI. And I think for a long time in the bear markets, sometimes going super heavy on marketing just doesn't make sense. And certain parts of marketing don't make sense. Like I would say, Nicole knows we've debated this for many years. LDA's been around for almost a decade, I think 8 years now. And I've been, in crypto for 10 years, and we've debated for a long time, are KOLs effective? And I think yes, with caveats, like having KOLs that are actually, you know, ingrained in the topic that you're discussing is important, but just generally paying like big influencers a bunch of money, usually you don't get a good return from that. In a raging bull, you might, but for the most part, I don't think it's that effective. You got to be very strategic about it. But yeah, there's some of my thoughts. I wish that the people cared more about the tech, but in reality, marketing is really important.
Yeah, Rock, as you said, like we've been talking about that for years, right? And like I think sometimes micro influencers who have reasonable rates and charges and who people might still have some trust for because they haven't completely sold out might be worth it. But like sometimes the big influencers want these insane rates and then you'll see like zero conversions from these very expensive campaigns that you run with them. And it's just crazy that people will still do it. And like you said, maybe in a raging bull market, it's effective, but not in a regular market. And we've also talked about things like, if we're doing PR in a time when the only people who are reading crypto publications are people who are already into crypto, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you're kind of in the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess on the KOL thing, so you could look at it like a couple ways, and I've looked at it both ways, and I've thought about it, and I've changed my opinion, and your opinion should change because times change, and effectiveness of these things constantly changes, and you constantly have to be optimizing. But like one way you could look at it is if you're going to pay, I'm just going to make up numbers, and they might not even line up, but I'm just trying to make a general point. If you're going to pay, let's say, 100 small thousand influencer, or call it 10,000 follower influencers, this, and then you could instead hire like, a big one that has 1 million, and it is for the big one, you're generally going to pay less than 100 times what you would pay in total for the smaller ones, but that's like misleading. So what I'm saying is, bigger influencer, you'll get more followers per dollar generally, but the problem is, I think a lot of these bigger influencers have worn out their social credit with their audience, and so because they shill so many things because they're the big ones and they're so in demand, and people that don't understand are just paying them these crazy 50K video. I mean, that's common with the bigger ones. um, but the problem is their audience doesn't trust them, and so yeah, they might have a ton of followers and get a lot of exposure and reach, but their audience is not buying things that they talk about because they talk about a new thing every day, and because they know that they're being paid for it. And so I think I generally agree with Nicole that if you could find more niche KOLs that have kind of built a better social credit score, with their community and who aren't just shilling things and aren't all about the money, then and their audience actually trusts them and believes in them, you can get a lot farther.
Well, there you go. That's that definitely is a lot of like the inside stuff of how this kind of stuff works. So definitely anyone who's in marketing should be taking notes from that kind of stuff. Okay, let's keep going
I guess
down
if I could
the.
add actually
Yeah,
one more thing there, Joel. So
sure.
I would say also the best possible thing you could do is get free like KOLs, people who care about the thing you're building. That's when you know you have an actual product market fit. And like I know that's not easy. It's way easier said than done, and it's taken us a decade to have those kind of opportunities. Like for example, LitVM, one of the projects we're incubating right now, we have I don't even know 50 small kind of and medium Litecoin KOLs that are talking about it, and we haven't paid a single person. But because it's such an interesting product, it gets organic traction. Same thing with Polygon. So we incubated Polygon, and in the early days, I got Elio Trades and CryptoLark for Polygon, and a bunch of others, and we didn't pay them anything. It was just a relationship I had with them, and they trusted when I said that this technology was very interesting. And so they talked about, Matic. It did very well. It made all their audience a ton of money. And then when I would bring them other things like QuickSwap later, which I'm co-founder of, and we incubated also, when I brought that to them, they were open to, okay, yeah, we'll talk about it. And we didn't have to pay them again because, they actually believed in the thing and it had product market fit. So that's the best thing you could do is always try to target like free people who actually believe in the thing because it's going to go so much farther than paid people because the audience isn't stupid. Maybe some are, but I think people understand that people especially these days understand how like pervasive marketing is and how like psychological warfare like marketing teams and the whole world is on media like trying to brainwash people into like, hey, you should buy this or you should do this, and people don't like that. They don't like being told what they should buy or do by someone that's being paid to do it.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. And that kind of gets into like the whole like organic versus paid type stuff, which I'm sure we'll dive into in just a second. Crypto Sailor, you want to give a quick intro, who you are, what you do, and just really quick, kind of like almost like yes or no, should protocols market themselves?
Yeah, thanks for having me on and thanks for inviting me to speak. I come from, let's say, a slightly different background than most people would be coming from in marketing and business, which is I have a technological background. I'm a software engineer. I also learned of Bitcoin very early on, and in relevance to this conversation, I was a very much early adopter and also early proponent and organizer for Bitcoin in both sharing the information at like Occupy Wall Street, being involved in organizing events in 2012 and participating in events and speaking at conferences and things like this. So I've been in crypto for a very long time. I come from the technical side, so generally what I try to do, and this is why I engage with, let's say, the non-technical community, is try to help bridge the gap, which is before getting into the weeds about which KOLs are best and all this kind of stuff, there's really important philosophical conversation that relates to cultural issues that exist in the crypto space that would probably need to be resolved first. And obviously, given my background and engagement with this technology, the community, and the ecosystem, I am very much pro marketing and communications for this new technology revolution.
Very nice. Last but absolutely not least, Tyler, how's it going? Introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, etc., and then real quick your take on that.
Yeah, it's going good, man. Thank you, Joel, for inviting me. If you guys don't know, I am the host of Spaces on Web3 Global, which Joel has actually been a part of multiple times. It's always a great time over there. Basically, just stepping out of the shadow of that account a little bit today on my personal. So yeah, so obviously I host those spaces. I have done writer by trade, I guess you could say. I've also been the project manager in the space, social media manager, all different kinds of things for a few different projects, and looking to do some more of that lately. But yeah, so as far as the question goes, I'll say yes, but with an asterisk. I think it should be done authentically and correctly. I think Rock down there was saying a lot of what I was actually going to say. There's a lot of KOLs out there, different things. I almost despise the term, to be honest with you. And Joel, if you've ever been on my spaces where we're talking about marketing a little bit, I think you kind of get that vibe from what I'm talking about. And one of the things that's the elephant in the room for that is, metrics can be faked as well. Literally anything. I mean, they could even have alt accounts that are, commenting or putting out, making it seem basically that they're a lot bigger than they are. Obviously you would want as much organic marketing as possible. But of course, you have to do marketing in the space. There's no other way around it. How else are you going to vie for attention? And right now, it's a very attention focused space right now. So yeah, just to get into it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for coming on. Always enjoy the spaces we've been on. Yeah, always a good time. One of the better hosts in the space, I have to say. There's like a couple I'm keeping my eyes on, but uh, as far as like all this stuff is concerned, it seems like everyone sort of has a consensus that it's tech that needs products and needs users. You need to market it, but let's kind of maybe I'll play a little bit like devil's advocate on a lot of these things here, but let's just talk about let's go back to the early days, right? Where in the early days, we had the Bitcoin miracle where Bitcoin came out and then there was no company behind it, no real team, just kind of Satoshi. And then there's no big fund, no paid marketing, anything, just the entire community. It spread by word of mouth. People on their own voluntarily promoted it. And it gave rise to this mythos of, just complete fair launch, no VC, no ICO, no pre-mine, and it just if it's meant to be, it'll just grow like wildfire. If it doesn't, it's a shit coin kind of vibe and sentiment. That's not necessarily nearly as strong these days in the more modern blockchain world, but at least in the Bitcoin maximalist space, it definitely is, and that's where you have a lot of people saying, "Oh, only Bitcoin because it's the only one that's the virgin birth. It's pure that kind of did this stuff." So I guess the question on that is, well, to start out with, if there is a team behind it with like a marketing budget and things like that, can it actually claim to be like a decentralized permissionless protocol? And that's kind of a that's kind of an interesting question. So raise your hands. I see Crypto Sailor raise his hand. Just anyone else also raise your hand and we'll get into this. But start with Crypto Sailor real quick and then Kenton.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in quickly because it kind of ties in with my intro, and that is there's an important context to realize when it comes to the initial growth and adoption of Bitcoin, which is that coming out of the global financial collapse, there was a really, really major shift in, let's say, global consciousness as it relates to the value of the banks. And so it wasn't as if, it was Bitcoin in and of itself. And this, you can also, of course, draw all the inferences you want from the original Genesis block of the Satoshi ledger and the link to the article that's there. And I think it's kind of important to realize that without Occupy Wall Street, without this massive sentiment against the banks as a consequence of people losing their homes and losing their jobs, it would not have been possible to get the kind of traction we got for Bitcoin. It was the perfect storm, right? And it's like also the culmination of many decades of technological innovation. But that's a super important thing to realize about why did Bitcoin have success? Global financial collapse, people were pissed off. They came out to the streets. People like myself in the real world and other people posting online were the ones who were of the grassroots community of Bitcoin that were promoting this thing to a very, very open and receptive and very large market. So that's happening right now. There's no Occupy Wall Street happening again. It's already happened. So to think that that can be replicated is impossible. And secondarily, to think somehow that, marketing or advertising or putting money into that compromises decentralization, I think kind of doesn't acknowledge the reality as to what decentralization is. And that decentralization isn't necessarily, there's like an ideological issue that it goes on in the crypto community amongst, let's say, the hardcore, who for some reason think that Bitcoin success can be replicated, and or that doing proactive professional outbound communications somehow undermines the decentralization of the technology. That's just not true. So that would be my response to your really great devil's advocate question.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's a lot of not devils who have advocated for this. A lot of old school vibes in the more kind of cypherpunk related community. It does also remind me of Grin. When Grin came out, the Mimblewimble protocol, they kind of tried to replicate that, like a non-founder, mined from zero, no anything, and it kind of flopped. So maybe it is the lightning in a bottle. But I'd love to hear what Kenton has to say about this.
Yeah, first, I think Bitcoin's a unicorn, right? Like something like that comes around once every 1,000 years type thing, right? So to think you're going to replicate it again, I think is good luck, right? And but I would argue that Satoshi did pay for marketing. He paid with his time, right? So when we talk about pay for marketing, it's not just the dollar cost; it's the time cost. Satoshi, he had a mailing list, right, that he curated and added people to it, however long it took him to build it. He's
Didn't use MailChimp, but still.
Okay, well, but he had a list that he sent the white paper to, right? He's in chat forums talking about Bitcoin. He spent his time getting the message out there and telling people about it. So he did spend on marketing. It just wasn't necessarily
In
in
a lot
hard
of ways,
dollars.
that email list, that was marketing directly too.
Yeah, exactly. Like if Satoshi and Hal Finney just built Bitcoin just between them in their homes and like didn't tell anyone about it, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So they did do marketing.
Yeah. So now, to inject some like the nuance, the discussion in there, the early Satoshi Day type stuff, I guess could be considered like um, passion and word of mouth kind of stuff. Even though it was explicit marketing, it still was. I care about this project. I tell people about it, and then they care about it and they tell people about it. Whereas sometimes what we see these days is just like you're hiring an influencer, you're hiring a social media manager, you're paying to run ad campaigns, and it's not that word of mouth type thing. Dr. K, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, so I think in the early days, right, the early people with Bitcoin were kind of in it for the tech, if you will, or in it for the libertarian ideas around Bitcoin, right? So it was a different style, of marketing, if that makes sense. It's more of like an education style, explaining how the money system works, explaining how the Fed works, explaining how proof of work works, immutability of a blockchain. Like that was the style of marketing back then. When we apply that to modern marketing, I think what you see is there's a lot of projects that don't have interesting things to say about tech, either because they don't really have it or the tech isn't well differentiated. So you kind of get into just this, name marketing, influencer marketing, and that really is what predominates the crypto space. What we take as an approach, because we do have tech, is we kind of have two lines of marketing. One is educational marketing, and that can happen on Twitter, that can happen in blogs, that can happen in peer-reviewed, publications that we present at conferences. And that's kind of like one line that can happen through YouTube podcasts, and those are like long form educational. But then when it comes to other marketing, with space is so noisy, we see very little traction using KOL type marketing just to like get a name out there. Because if you can't get someone to see your name and then either do the research or get immediate value from what you're offering, there's effectively no ROI. So what we do from that perspective is, instead of marketing Quai for the people that aren't looking to understand it, we're trying to market products to people that actually have a need. And one of the parts of that product is using Quai, because we don't think that there's any juice left, given the amount of noise in the space, where marketing a name to people that won't be able to understand the tech gets you any return. And what we really think is, you have to market a product to people that have a need that just happens to use the blockchain.
Very interesting. Yeah, it is kind of interesting where the kind of where this marketing thing maybe came from is people use like decentralized peer-to-peer, whatever, and people thought, oh, people are in it for the tech, are going to talk about it and word of mouth it around, and companies are fine to advertise themselves and market it who use this tech, but it's not for the base layer kind of to market itself. And like, for example, the early days, so like, also fun bit of lore, back in 2014, I think, I wrote content for these brochures called Bitcoin Bigfoot, which is some of the first Bitcoin like flyers to hand out to people way back in the day. And it was that's how early days it was, is CoinDesk actually had an article just about these flyers that I helped write the content for being produced, because like no one had done this stuff. But like, you have tons of companies that are advertising for Bitcoin constantly because they're advertising themselves, and Bitcoin is just the way they do it. And I don't think anyone kind of has any kind of throws any shade on companies advertising themselves. But then we have like the protocol itself, and probably in the early days, it's, if you had anyone advertising a protocol explicitly, maybe it felt scammy, because the protocol, like, you can't do anything with the protocol itself. You do something with the things built on top of the protocol, whether it's apps, payment things, payment gateways, etc., or anything. And I guess the idea of advertising the protocol might seem like, buy my shit coin, kind of like, I'm selling this token, pump my bags. So is there any merit to that sort of um, bearish take on marketing the protocol itself, to be like, yeah, you know what, protocol marketing is kind of like a B2B type thing, where you shop the protocol around to like wallets and exchanges and other companies that want to build on top of it. But if you actually start marketing the protocol to like the general public, then that's kind of scammy and nasty. Anyone want to give a take on that sort of?
I'll take
Kenton,
that. Yeah,
there we go.
sure. Yeah, if you want your token price to go nowhere, sure, don't do any marketing. I mean, it's that simple. Like, why is there a token issued in the first place? Like, you're trying to make money, right? You're buying the token to try and make a return. It's a protocol. The same thing as a business. We're trying to get users, trying to get revenue, trying to make money. If you want that token to go up, yeah, of course, you want to get more users and grow revenue, grow organically. But you need to get the message out there. You need to get the people to tell about it. And if you can get your token to trade at a premium because the market really likes it, great. Like, this is a free market. These are, this is how business works. Why would you want to create a product and no one why would anybody want to create something and not get paid for it? I mean, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's also nothing wrong with wanting to get paid.
And people market things that they don't want to get paid for. That, I mean, I generally agree with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's like, it's to each their own, right? So it's not like, oh, you have a decentralized protocol that you can or cannot market. It's not like, where is this rule written down? Is it in the Constitution? Is it, is Big Brother telling us we can't do this? Like, it's a free market. If you don't want to promote your crypto, don't. If you do it. Like, there's no like, it has to be this way or another. But if you want your token to go up in value, you have to market it. Like, to sit back and not is crazy. I think the question, the better question is, how much should we spend on marketing, right? And that is the question. Obviously the organic marketing is best, like the free marketing, the users, people, showing your product for free. Absolutely, that's the best. But maybe you want to amplify that and put some money into it. And then that should be the debate. How much you want to spend? Where do we? Because it's hard to measure the returns on spending on marketing, right? Whether it's PR, brand awareness, trying to get new users, whatever your goal is, it can be expensive. So from that point of view, that's a fair statement to say, well, maybe we don't think it's worth it to spend the money because we won't get the return. But that doesn't mean marketing is bad or wrong or shouldn't be done. I actually find it's. I mean, we even avoid assume take protocol crypto out of it. All of us listening, every human being is marketing themselves every day, right? The avatars we have on our profiles, the logos we have for our companies, the clothes we wear. Like we're constantly selling ourselves to the people around us and everyone we interact with. Like this is humanity. This is how it works. We're always selling ourselves and selling what we do. So to suggest
When you're finding your
it's cutting off for
Rock,
me.
you're
I don't know.
breaking up really bad. Yeah, we can't even hear a single word.
What if Rock is just a marketing gimmick? He's not a real person, and he's just glitching right now.
We've both met him in person.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I think it's I think a protocol, the developers and the nodes decide they do not want to, fine, but I don't see how they're going to succeed versus ones that do.
Yeah, there's almost this idea in crypto that it's somehow bad to make money, at least for later ones. Like, I think it's because Satoshi didn't make any money, then no one else should. But I think there's that general idea. I find it very weird because there's nothing wrong with having the right incentives. You can still build, like if you have money, if you earn money, it's because you're building useful products. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think from the
Also,
useful,
we'd argue that Satoshi does have a lot of money, or is dead, or lost his keys. One of the three, but he could have a lot of money. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. K.
yeah, I mean, I think it's about the motivation, right? So when I think about protocols, especially layer one protocols, and like for Quai, this isn't an exercise in making money. This is an exercise in building technologies to achieve the societal outcome, which I find morally favorable. Now, if you make money in that process, that's fine, but like it's not the primary goal. So I think the difference when it becomes cringy is if your goal is strictly to make money and not like achieve a protocol that's broadly used with greater utility that creates sort of better societal outcomes, like that's very cringe. But if you're doing it with greater purpose, I'm willing to show quad to anybody any day of the week, and I don't feel bad about it because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to separate money from the state, which I think is a incredibly not only valuable thing but almost imperative if we want to stay free humans in a digital world. So that's why I'm here, and if that's like your motivation, shill your coin all day long, and I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, interesting.
Can I add something to it? So I used to be an engineer, and I feel like I have a similar mindset of developers where it's like we can look at something and understand it, and we can kind of see, like, we can, how do I say this, like if we build something that we think is awesome, we just feel like it's self-evident, like you should see this, it's awesome, and then you should just buy it and be attracted to it. I shouldn't have to explain it to you, I shouldn't have to sell it to you, you should just know. And I feel like maybe that's some of the developers, maybe a little bit on the spectrum or something like that, that feel like the work is self-evident. You should just be able to look at it and value it and buy it, use it, whatever, I shouldn't have to tell you about it. I think that's just a bit of a on the spectrum view of it all. And yeah, which I obviously disagree with. I think you doesn't matter how great or good your product is, you got to tell people about it. You got to get the message out. And I know too, this is maybe another thing, is some people might not like the idea of, some marketing and sales can be actually, I'm personally like this. So when marketing and sales, you're supposed to like pull on people's emotions. And like I don't want to trick people into, investing into my fund, right? I don't want to trick people into becoming my client. I want people to choose to do business with me and become my client because they value me, right? They see what I bring to the table. I don't want to have to try and trick them. But unfortunately, that's what sales and marketing is. It is kind of like tricking people. You're pulling on their emotions and getting them to make an emotional decision. So maybe that's what there's some pushback from a developer type mindset where it's like, well, I don't want to trick anybody. I don't want to have to fool them into this. I want them to come in honestly. And so that can be hard from, somebody who's doing honest, good work, that now when they got to go do sales, they're like, well, now I got to do this kind of like, pull on people's heartstrings just to convince them. It's like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't sound right. I want to explain how awesome my product is. And unfortunately, that's not how sales work, right? People make emotional decisions, and you have to play to their emotions in marketing. So maybe that's where there's the disconnect. Is developers don't want to play that game, which I understand, but unfortunately, it's the world we live in. It's how the world works.
Tyler.
Yeah, I would say, it is a bit unfortunate, but that's absolutely how it works. And, that's why a lot of people don't really do so well in sales. And I've had, back and forth in the spaces that I do about how, a better team is not 5 all-star devs. It's like, 2 all-star devs and then somebody who's really good at sales, somebody who's really good at understanding community. It takes a more well-rounded approach to succeed over here. But just talking about like the, for the betterment of humanity argument that I think Dr. K was making, there's a devil's advocate argument as well, that if it is for the betterment of humanity, then, these infrastructure layers especially could even possibly be seen as public goods, right? Maybe to not even be about the profit, but about moving things forward. Do I feel that way about it? Not necessarily, right? But it's something that could be considered in the argument as well. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. So in this whole like discussion about like marketing and stuff, and there's also like um there's a certain element of it where um we've had this kind of discussion of, let me just cut to like the Thor chain thing because it's kind of come up. This is the reason why this kind of came up in the space. So Thor chain is a cross chain AMM DEX, but it's a chain. It's largely infrastructure, and kind of the some of the early strategy, at least, was we're going to build a cross chain infrastructure for swaps, and then we're not going to run our own front end like Uniswap or Tornado Cash, etc. style. We don't want that smoke. We're just going to do our own thing, and we're going to have other companies kind of do that, and other companies have, and Thorchain has a lot of volume and usage and things like that across the various things with other companies, I guess, doing marketing on their behalf. But there's been some sort of discussion these days about, well, we've been kind of putting everything into these third party businesses, but they integrate other swap networks like the Maya protocol, Chainflip, etc. And they're not loyal to us. So therefore all of our, I guess, user base, and we don't have any like brand loyalty, et cetera, behind this. So we should make our own interface and market the in the protocol itself. Whereas, so there's that kind of discussion going on. Anyone have any takes on this one in particular? Like, should it be all done by the front ends, et cetera, and just kind of like build build the protocol, or should the protocol be trying to market itself and then have third parties as maybe, I don't say second class citizens, but like let the third parties fall where they may?
I've been driving this. Do you want me to start going off, or do you want somebody else?
And
Someone else to chat.
you should start. Everyone
Okay.
else just listening, and like, if you have a take on this, because I found this to be a
Okay.
fascinating discussion. So yeah, bring
I've
everyone up to
been
speed.
Yeah, so just to add more to that, over the last, I'd say, couple of years, it's been a recurring theme within the Thorchain community to do some marketing. And then earlier this year, I kind of took it upon myself. Like, I agree. I think something official needs to be done. And the original idea with Thorchain is that, yeah, it'd be in the background in these different front ends and wallets that everybody would use. And the real marketing for Thorchain is we want to sell to these wallets, these front ends, and get them to integrate us. We're a business-to-business product, which has been working. It's been going great. Thorchain's in Trust Wallet, Ledger, OKX, Edge Wallet. There's like 24 different wallets. I'm pretty sure MetaMask is working on it. Like the vision is that every wallet and website is going to have Thorchain integrated at some point. However, those front ends are also integrating other dexes and sexes as well. And what we're seeing is two things. One is that the users on, say, Ledger, for example, they have to go and select Thorchain. It isn't automatic that the trade is going through Thorchain. Thorchain pops up in a list with other sexes. And it's not something that I really thought about, that a self-custody wallet would offer trades through a centralized exchange. I think it's actually insane they do that, because what's been happening is those trades, some people have had 6 and 7 figure trades get frozen, and then the SEX demands some kind of KYC. They don't accept it, and that trade sits in limbo for months until the person can come up with whatever arbitrary KYC they want. So I think it's pretty irresponsible they're doing it, but they are. And so it's not like Thorchain is default getting any of these trades through all these different front ends. And so, it behooves us to try and, tell people to go and use Thorchain inside their wallet. And then the other thing that's been coming up is, because there's these other routes competing with Thorchain, now we're in a race to the bottom for our fees. So, liquidity on these exchanges is becoming commoditized, whereas it's getting lower and lower. Whereas, we're debating charging between 5 and 8 basis points. Meanwhile, the front ends are collecting 50, 70, 100 basis points. And so I'm like, well, what if we got to go through effort to market and promote people to go to Ledger, to go trade on Thorchain? Why not just tell them to come trade on our own website? Our own front end, where we just charge 5 basis points. There's no affiliate fee. There is no markup. And then not only, and having our own website, we can actually monitor and control like the marketing pitch. Like, we can actually track the traffic, where are people coming from, which channels are working. We can actually hone in our efforts, so we know where to focus them. And then the second part of it is marketing for the Rune token in general, because if you go to a Thorchain front end, hey, this is great, it's cool. I want to invest in this protocol. I'm going to go buy the Rune token. And this was happening in the early days because Thor Swap was like the de facto front end for Thorchain, and that's where everybody was going to go using Thorchain, and everyone thought Thor Swap is Thorchain. Even savvy users think that. And so what they were doing was buying the Thor Swap token, which is called Thor. They're buying that token thinking that is the token for Thorchain. So having our own front end has a secondary benefit of promoting people to invest in the Rune token. And the idea with having our own front end isn't to canalize volume from the other wallets. That's not it at all. Is that our own audience has somewhere to go. Right? The whole idea of Thorchain being integrated into all these other wallets is that we're tapping into a new audience there. and that wallet has a relationship with those users. They're happy to pay the fees within that wallet because that's where the relationship is. So the idea of a ThorChain front end isn't to necessarily compete, it's to add to the whole ecosystem and give us something that we're more control of, we can market and promote. And then heaven forbid, if some wallets wanted to turn off ThorChain for whatever reason, or route flows to different dexes for whatever reason, at least we still have our own front end working. It's still going, it's still happening. We have something there. So in no way, shape, or form should a dedicated front end to ThorChain stop the spread of ThorChain being integrated elsewhere. That should keep going. It's not an either or question. It's an and. They should both be done. Maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
I'll chime
anyone
in a
else,
little bit there
sorry,
too.
go ahead, Alan.
So I think ultimately, when you look at the distribution and how protocols reach users, I think it's been well said on the space that you have to reach them through apps and how apps can go and make that touch point. Because if you're just getting into a swap or to a wallet, you don't have to understand all of the complexity of a consensus mechanism, transactions per second, decentralization. You're like, hey, I have this new thing. You can send me crypto. I can do a swap. I can buy some tokens, and that's really easy. We've seen the emergence of really killer applications like Pump Fund going to ICO and going to get their token in the market, and others like Phantom integrating and abstracting things like Hyperliquid. So more and more of that distribution is now in the front ends, but ultimately still a lot of these assets have that monetary premium and have that native understanding that users are looking to get into and acquire. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin, the greatest marketing for Bitcoin is it's digital gold, it's a store of value. And that narrative alone is enough to really carry it and continue to carry it to where it is today. Bitcoin has had so much marketing thrown behind it. You have people like Michael Saylor really championing it across the globe, and Bitcoin ETFs now that are doing all of this heavy lifting that the cypherpunks and all of the Bitcoin OGs used to do back in the day. So I think it's really sort of a transformation of the space where a lot of the apps are going to own that user interface, own that connection with the user, the distribution. I mean, you see MetaMask recently adding Solana, which after years feels like they're finally getting into alternative chains rather than just EVM, and so you could really consider them a late mover there. And people have been really pushing for that Solana support, and you're going to see more and more of that complexity get abstracted, that multi-chain experience get integrated, and I think you're going to see more ease of use for users. But then again, it adds that need for understanding of what assets you're actually supporting, what you're using, the chains you're using, and I think that's where marketing really comes into play. Is like, why should I use Solana over Ethereum or Quai or Bitcoin or these other chains that kind of come into play there?
And if I could add one more thing, just like with Bitcoin, the guerrilla marketing, how many times have you sat down with someone, here, download this Bitcoin wallet, I'll show you how to use it, right? And that's what really amplified the network effects. With ThorChain, in the Twitterverse, you'll see dozens of ThorChads reply to a post, oh, use ThorChain, use ThorChain, use ThorChain. But how? Like, we have all the rune holders are de facto salesmen for ThorChain, and they have no way to, they want to sell the product and want to get people to use it, but just saying use ThorChain is really difficult. Like, if they could say, go to this website, trade here, boom, done. Like, it's a much stronger call to action, and that's free marketing and advertising for ThorChain to give all of its Rune token investors something to sell, something to send to people to get them to use. Because otherwise, right now, you got to say, well, go to Trust Wallet and maybe the route will go through ThorChain, or go to Ledger. But now you have to go buy a Ledger, down Ledger Live, and you have to remember to click ThorChain. And maybe by that time, the user sees all these other options. No, I don't want to use ThorChain anymore. I want to use something else. So it makes it very difficult for guerrilla marketing to take hold for ThorChain when we have to send people somewhere else, when we could be sending them to our own interface.
If it's
Someone wanna
possible, I'd
chime
like to
in?
just
Go for it.
jump in for a second. I just like, it's important that I say this. I'm the original. I worked with the ThorChain project. There was an officially built and funded by the ThorChain protocol wallet. It's called Asgard X. I'm the original developer of that wallet. So, I mean, this is kind of indicative, right? So I want to just back up and help people frame this, okay? There is a major disconnect in understanding between the people who understand the technology and the people who are on the business side or finance side or marketing and communications. And one of the things that happens is because, as was kind of mentioned before, I mean, obviously not all devs are the same. There are like 3 or 4 primary different cultures amongst developers. There's the hacker community, there's the startup community, and then there's kind of, you know, your basic developer who works at a company kind of thing. But insofar as there is this divide and understanding between the technology, a lot of the times the people who understand the technology, in their efforts to try and communicate it to the market and therefore create the narratives that marketers or salespeople or guerrilla marketers or whoever are going to use to go into the market, they create misunderstandings in their desire to make it simple to understand, which is the wrong approach. It's really important to kind of look at the history of technology revolutions and go back and look at marketing and advertising efforts that were undertaken, let's say in the early 80s by, you know, original digital service providers that were providing even the most basic email services before people even understood what email was, which is that you have to unpack. And this has been like a major problem amongst the tech side in crypto since the beginning. And it goes all the way to the branding of Bitcoin, right? The branding of Bitcoin was terrible because there are no coins. And so the whole unwrapping and unraveling of that understanding of the technology actually creates a barrier to adoption and communication by the technology to the appropriate target market. So we on the technical side create just vast amounts of complexity as it relates to applied cryptography, network architecture, and things like this. And then turning around and trying to help, you know, people who would promote and sell and market this as a product to the market, there's a major lack of understanding. And that's what leads to situations like with ThorChain. I've been following, obviously, the project for a very long time. I worked with JP and Chad, the founders, on building Asgard X, and I've been following and involved in the protocol and the project for over 5 years. And one of the things, if we were to use that kind of as a microcosm, is that obviously when you spend, you know, 4 years in higher education, another few years in tech, you know, professional apprenticeship, however you want to talk about it, in order to just get to the point where you can begin to build out these protocols, you of course don't have any expertise in marketing and sales and communications. So what happened in this scenario is that, you know, the ThorChain group doesn't actually fully understand their own product and their own market, right? So as such, being in the kind of bubble that they're in, which is this crypto bubble, and their desire to get more interactions with their protocol, they have begun to compete in a market that is not the best market for their product because they don't really understand the product and they don't really understand the true target market for the unique value proposition. So, you know, I can go into this for quite a while. I'm kind of an expert in this area. I'm happy to answer questions as to what's going on there and what happened and all this kinds of things. But it all boils down to the fact that, you know, we have to understand what the product is, what the unique value proposition is, and what's the best target market for that value proposition. Until you have that, like, your marketing efforts are going to go awry, and you're going to end up with situations where you are just chasing yourself to the bottom of the barrel, trying to undercut services that you can't ever undercut, right? In this whole notion of we just have to make it cheaper so then we get more routes, but without realizing that a decentralized protocol can never compete with a centralized protocol in costs, because decentralized protocols are inherently more expensive. And then to get in beyond that, like, who are the best, you know, target market for that? Is it small scale crypto holders? Is it people who have a few $100 or a few $1,000 in crypto? Because for them, using a centralized exchange isn't maybe necessarily as critical differentiation between using self-sovereign DeFi. So, if you were to look at, say, like Thorchain, what is the value proposition? It's never going to compete with centralized exchanges, and it's not best for small crypto holders. And secondarily, they already had tapped into the, let's say, the better market fit, which is larger scale custodians of crypto who have no alternative, right? The benefit of some of these DeFi protocols is that for large scale custodians who are running like bespoke, ad hoc digital cash management systems and can't just use an app like Trust Wallet. They have offline air gapped, key stores or something like this. Then understanding the right product market fit with Thorchain is to not try to go, bargain basement bin and try to compete with competitors that you can't win against in the end anyways, but to go to the better product market fit, which is larger scale custodians of crypto who have no other alternative. And therein, within that market, Thorchain has no competition. So, and this is like, Thorchain is a really great microcosm of what's going wrong with crypto, because you have a core development group that in itself does not fully understand the product or the appropriate market. And insofar as they are so desperate to kind of get fellow crypto people into this, protocol, they are targeting the wrong market, and therefore all their efforts in this direction really waste time and value in trying to gain adoption for the protocol. That's kind of the sum up. It's like there's a divide between tech and biz. The tech people can't appropriately communicate the product to the biz people, so the biz people misunderstand the product and then take it potentially to the wrong market. So there has to be, rather than trying to oversimplify or memify, what is inherently sophisticated technology, rather than doing that, you need to unpack it for the market, which is, there are tremendous efforts going on all over the place in crypto to do this, but it's about breaking it down and turning each little, function or each little feature into its own narrative to try and create a broader story for this. Because if you're looking at DeFi or people putting money into, any protocol, they're giving up their value to this network that they don't understand. And then when you obfuscate that by oversimplifying it, that's when it comes across as scammy. So that's, I think, the major kind of barriers that exist within the whole entire crypto space when it comes to how do we promote this technology, how do we get adoption. We have to stay the product, and we have to better understand the real target markets for those products.
Yeah. What else can I say other than that's pretty comprehensive? Lots of great points there. I definitely agree on the disconnect. And I definitely think that just the fact of discussing these kinds of differences rather than just having your head in the sand and saying, oh, everything's doing fine. We're getting tons of trading volume on Thorchain. This is great. I think that's a good sign. And these discussions should be had, which is, kind of why I'm helping give this a forum, obviously for all crypto, but, with Thorchain in mind. Who had their hand up first? Was it Zano or Dr. K?
Dr. K.
Okay, Dr. K, you go first, and then Zano, you chime in.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what he just said, except for one of the suppositions. Our sort of whole thesis at Quai is that it's possible to build a proof of work platform that's decentralized, that can scale, and that has costs as well as finalization times that are better than Visa MasterCard. And so that's obviously a very difficult design target, and that's why we've spent 7 years building it before we came to market. But our thesis is, if you fully build the network correctly, if you can replace money, you can replace every other use case that exists. So if you have a decentralized system, so you're not doing some compromised, centralizing, pseudo company coin like Solana, but you're actually a decentralized system, and you can hit the properties of money, then you can also hit the properties of custodianship. You can also hit the properties of RWAs. You can also do whatever it is you want to do in DeFi. Those are all easier technical requirements than being money. So our thesis was be money. And once you do that, you can build applications, you can build interfaces for everything that is financial. So we are less concerned about finding a product market fit. because we can service everything that involves, financial transfers. That being said, there's obviously frictions associated with going from USD fiat or traditional rails into a cryptocurrency, which does sort of make some markets better to initially approach than others. But fundamentally, if that friction is overcome, you should be able to service everything that involves a digital value transfer.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to go back to the point Crypto Sailor made, that that decentralized projects can't really compete with sex. How we call it actually, like CX. Well, whatever. So I'm just, for example, I'm just checking out my wallet, and I see that Thorchain is there. But whenever I initiate a swap, it just defaults to the swap provider that charges the lowest fee, and generally that's centralized providers. So, and then there's not really something that is telling me that, if I use this provider I might get KYC'd, or if I use Thorchain, I actually get self-sovereignty. So I think you do need, I think this proves the point that you do need your own kind of marketing, and you need to have some control over the messaging, because otherwise, yeah, you leave it to things like this where people just use cheapest and have no clue why would they use something like Thorchain.
Let's see. Base Junkie. I let you in here. I have no idea who you are, but might as well introduce yourself and then chime in if you have something to say on this. I see your hand up.
Hello, Dash, and yo to everybody in the audience. So yeah, I am Base Junkie. I've been in crypto for about 5 years, and I created this account about a year and a half ago when I really felt that Base with the backing of Coinbase had the best opportunity of bringing the next billion people on chain. Now, going back to the original question slash title of the space, should blockchains market themselves? I was in here about half an hour ago, and I was listening to some of the speakers, and it's like, yeah, of course, if you don't if you don't want your blockchain to succeed, don't market yourself. But at the end of the day, like, you got to say it loud, you got to say it proud, you got to say what your perspective is. Now, although my name is, like, my moniker, at least on Twitter, is Base Junkie, so obviously you would assume that I am a base maxi, and it's true. It is where I've chosen to lay my hat and spend the majority of my time. But I'm not a chain maxi. I'm a builder maxi, and I feel like Base truly has that builder ethos. I remember, like, a year and a bit ago when it was talking about the L2s, Base versus Blast. They both had a similar sort of TVL, 1.4 billion, but the ethos was very different. Blast was talking about their airdrop campaign, and they had a lot of the 2021 builders, creators, and KOLs over there, talking about all the great things that Blast was going to do. But then once the airdrop happened, the TVL completely died. The airdrops were unimpressive at best, and Blast, now, I mean, bless them, they're going to try, but it's kind of withered on the vine. I think people just sort of, like, gave up. They said, like, okay, you know what? I was in it for the airdrop. The airdrop wasn't impressive. I'm out. Whereas Base at a similar sort of point was 1.4 billion TVL, and they said, look, we're not launching our own token. We're a layer 2 on ETH, and we're fostering an economy of builders that are looking to bring the next billion people on chain and the next $1 trillion under assets under management on chain. So I think from the very jump, whatever chain you're building on, whatever chain you're working on, or whatever chain you believe in, understand clearly what their MO is. Blast, we want to reward with airdrops early users. We want to reward KOLs. Okay, there's your incentive. There's your reason. There's your why to care. You always got to think about the why. Base, we want to bring 1 billion people on chain. We want to revolutionize the stablecoin market. I mean, just recently in the past month, bringing on partners like Shopify and JP Morgan. I mean, like, it's hard to deny that the stablecoins market is moving heavily on Base because of the heavy support of Coinbase, the first crypto company to make it to the S&P 500. So, I think whatever chain you're building on, think about your, like, why am I here? What is the end goal for this? Obviously, different strokes for different folks, different needs for different people. But I personally spend the majority of my time on Base because the message is clear, the goal is clear, and the support, backing, and connection from like the top management. I mean, for example, myself. I mean, I'm a Spaces host. I hosted like over 200 community spaces to support builders in the Base ecosystem, and even when I was like a nobody with less than 100 followers, Jesse Pollack, the founder of Base, co-founder of Base, was in my DMs saying that, hey, I appreciate what you do, and just like having this sort of like ethos from top down, it really moralizes the troops. So I mean, I spent some time in Solana. I have a previous account where I danced across all the chains, but I truly wanted to streamline my timeline, not delete all my old friends, and start this new account with Base Junkie. But yeah, should blockchains market themselves? Absolutely, absolutely. If you got something to say it loud, say it proud, and say it with your chest out. Because at the end of the day, there's such a large percentage of the population that is not yet on chain. And if we are going to be good ambassadors for it, we can't leave it up to mainstream media to tell our parents and our grandparents all about the hackers and hoodies, all about the scams, all the Libra tokens, and hawk tours, all that crap that unfortunately is a negative byproduct of crypto. We need to say it loud and say it proud that there are good actors in the space, and on-chain is the future. So yes, I completely agree. Should blockchains market themselves? 100% yes.
Perfect. Well, before I get into, I got to play devil's advocate kind of, or, whatever you call it, cypherpunk virtue signal advocate one last time uh, on this whole thing, and sort of rope in Thorchain also one last time with this thing. So, which by the way, and who here knows John Stossel? Was that name familiar at all? If you know, you know.
Yes.
John, I love John Stossel. He was a award-winning journalist, like old school journalist, who did a lot of like libertarian style content. But his best kind of vibe is what I love about him is he does a really fun like devil's advocate straw man, almost like pretending to be the other. Well, isn't it bad that companies make too much money? Shouldn't they give back to the poor? And I kind of aspire to that level of entertaining devil's advocacy. But anyway,
Yeah, I love the way he does it. It's kind of straw man devil's advocate, but it's great. He's awesome.
Yes, I love that. So in the spirit of that, and I'm not going to do it in his voice this time. So Bitcoin never had a dedicated Bitcoin wallet itself. Well, I mean, we're going to maybe get some of the OGs to go on this, but like there's a bunch of third party and volunteer wallets and stuff for Bitcoin. There's no Bitcoin run thing. And today I kind of feel like maximalism is pretty strong, and there's a bunch of Bitcoin only wallets like Lightning things, other things, all like either nonprofit type things or businesses. No one seems to have that problem of like, well, we need our own wallet. Bitcoin's getting lost in the thing. And of course you say, okay, Bitcoin, maybe it's just, it's the one exception. But as far as I understand it, Litecoin's had almost no dedicated kind of just, Litecoin has largely been a third party run, as far as the front end and the wallets kind of project. And Litecoin, even newer features like MWeb, which is not super new, but it's still the Mimblewimble extension block feature, has been actually implemented in third party wallets before a lot of like the more like Litecoin only type things. It's been had no problem getting like kind of first class treatment there, and has had no problem taking off as one of the very top most used cryptos for payments. And so all that being said, maybe listen, this I'm saying stuff I don't believe here, but aren't the Thor Chads being a little whiny that they just don't want to compete? That if things are really going well, like if you really were doing your job, you should be able to just like the by trying to do a Thorchain only kind of value capture interface, you're doing that at the expense of the customer. The end user wants to use the best swapping experience possible. And why would you try to scam them by corralling them into something that just supports Thorchain when they have better swapping rates and options in a kind of a more free market environment of a multi network kind of interface? So that's my kind of last like straw man devil's advocate. Anyone want to respond to that?
I mean, at that point, it just becomes a race to the bottom. Like, it's what I was saying earlier, that you need to somehow communicate that it's not just about the fees. Like, I think, like, I use Litecoin, for example, just because it's the most liquid, and it has low fees, but that's it. I mean, that's very easy to market on its own, because you are naturally inclined to use the cheapest and most liquid option. But with something like Thorchain, I think that the benefits are not as obvious, and so I definitely think you need to convey that message, um, in some other ways, because it's just not obvious. So some protocols are just not obvious to market. I think Bitcoin doesn't have that problem like it doesn't, but with privacy coins, for example, you definitely have that problem.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
And
an important point to bring up, because right, if you're selling a product, like, you need a quality product, and if you want to have an easy path to sales. And the Thorchain protocol has been kind of not, over the last couple of years, everybody knows about the Thorify debacle. They levered up and they lost on that, and so there's been a failing of the core development group to properly custody, the product itself. And then you have a whole community of people, like some people who are on this space, who understand the technology and understand the value proposition, but with the kind of moving of the goalposts as to what the product is, you're undermining your ability to sell and build trust in the market. So this is why, like, comes down to the real big reason I think about why you need marketing and why you need protocol, like direct protocol marketing, is the marketing and salespeople have to have good communication and a comprehensive strategy as to what the product is and what its value proposition is, and then to hold that vision such that you can do better at distribution of the product itself. That's a major problem that you just brought up.
And Joel, I want to, you weren't steel manning, trying to draw traffic to your front end, the place to trade on Thorchain, is scammy. That's just insulting. That's not steel manning. If we're lying to the consumer to come do that, all right, fine, that's scammy. But if we're just telling the consumer, hey, being factual, you can do these things on this website, that is not scammy at all. And that is, and if the consumer sees that and says, yeah, I like that, I want to do that, we are providing them a service that they want. If a consumer sees that and they're like, well, no, I don't want to use that website, I want to use my existing wallet, great, like, go right ahead. So we're not we're not criticizing any user for using another interface. And this is what's funny in this whole debate is we've had other interfaces criticize me or people in support of this idea. We have Thorchain has never ever gotten like we're not fighting the other wallets and front ends to prevent them from having other exchanges or to tell them how they should route their trades or to tell them that Thorchain can be the only one. Instead, we're being winners and looking at this problem, and instead of viewing the problem as an obstacle like a loser would, looking at this problem as an opportunity to like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should have our own front end where, if we do have our own audience, our own brand, they know where to get us and use us. They don't have to jump through all these other hoops to go somewhere else. So, sort of push back on that. I know I don't think you meant that. I know you're just talking. I just wanted to push back on that comment.
The comment I made is something I do not personally believe. I'm throwing out something that trying to push at the extreme end of the other side to elicit a response such as yours, and it worked. Congratulations. Sorry for the bait. You took the bait beautifully.
Good. Can I don't know if you want to keep going. I do want to add some more to the Thorchain thing. If you want to say something else. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so just maybe help other people know why doesn't Thorchain have its own web front end? Meanwhile, every other DEX and centralized exchange in the world does. The original idea was to avoid regulatory capture, to avoid Big Brother coming and shutting us down. So if we had our own interface which had 100% of the volume, and they shut it down, then Thorchain is toast, right? And so this might be a reason someone can use to not do marketing or sales. Is you're trying to attract attention from to get new customers. You also attract attention to Big Brother. And so the idea was to avoid that because, Thorchain is true, no KYC, permissionless, anything can go. And you'll know what, unfortunately, we get bad actors who take advantage of that, right? And so to try and protect Thorchain from Big Brother, the idea was try and be as decentralized as possible, which includes the front ends, the integrations, the wallets using us. And which I think is a valid point, valid argument. It's a good one. But after the developments of the last few years, keep in mind when this originally was designed with Thorchain, that was like 5 years ago when we were in a very hostile crypto environment. Now the environment is much more friendly. And we have had hacked illicit funds go through Thorchain. Knock on wood. I don't support it. I don't like it. But knock on wood. So far, everyone in the Thorchain ecosystem has been fine. Nothing's happened. And a part of that process, I'm like in February, the Bybit stuff went through Thorchain. I talked to lawyers. I talked to my local police. Like, hey, like, do I have anything to worry about? Like, what's the problem? Like this and that. And one is no, I don't. Being a node operator, I'm fine. And worst comes to worst, I'd get a cease and desist. Just stop doing. It's not like you go straight to jail. And then the third thing is the real question is, are you making money off of it? And this is what's interesting about if a Thorchain dedicated front end. If that website didn't make any money, and illicit funds are going through it,
this space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
They're actually really not, they can't get in much trouble because they're not benefiting. They have some plausible deniability there. And then the other part of that is the solution to pollution is dilution. And so and this is true, I know it sounds silly, but if you've got a toxic substance, the way to dispose of it is just spreading it out over as big of an area as possible. And the same is true for illicit funds going through Thorchain or any other exchange for that matter. We can't stop it. It's going to happen. The best Thorchain can do is just have as much licit volume so that it dwarfs all the illicit volume. So the more we can increase the volume going through that front end, and the more we can increase the volume on ThorChain, the less bad it looks. And this was the argument against ThorChain in February. Oh, it's 95% of the volume, therefore it's bad. Whereas on that same volume on Ethereum and Bitcoin, oh, it's 0.1% or whatever, therefore it's not bad. Even though it's the exact same dollar amount, it's the perception of the percentages. And so if that exact same dollar amount of Bitcoin went through ThorChain in February, but it was only 9.5% of the volume, would ThorChain have gotten nearly as bad backlash or bad press? It's still still $1 billion. The dollar amount hasn't changed, but the perception of it does. So the best thing ThorChain can do to protect itself from any negative publicity, or for say Big Brother coming after it, is generate as much licit volume as possible to prove and demonstrate and show this is a legitimate, honest business, an honest product. And then add it a bit further, if we want institutional investors to buy Rune, to invest in the ThorChain ecosystem, and the whole system has been designed around protecting us from giving the impression what we're doing is wrong, they're not going to want to touch it. Like we need to operate as if we're okay, and we are. We're not doing anything wrong. Everything is honest, and so if we operate in a more open, more free manner like that, better chance we'll have larger pools of money want to invest instead of being turned off, and they'll see the Bybit stuff. Okay, that's just unfortunate side effect, but we got to operate like we are honest because we are. And that'll help grow our honest business too. There you go, rant done.
How many, think about the Bybit people. I mean, this whole gosh, I don't know, all the KYC, any money laundering, it all seems like such a scam for control to me.
It
There's so
totally
many
is.
things that terrorists or money launderers or drug dealers use that we don't give a shit that they use shoes to go rob a bank or a car to rob a bank, or that the terrorists were using an Apple computer to hack or whatever. um you care about catching the money because that's what the government wants control over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say also, and let me continue on that point, but also loop it back to marketing as well, because it's an interesting segue. So back in 2014 or whatever, when Dash was launched, for at least like a year, I think the original name of the project was called Darkcoin, because the first functionality was a privacy functionality. And you could say the OG privacy coin came out of like a couple of, not, there might have been something, there was something else like Quark or something earlier. I don't remember, but my memory gets fuzzy then. But basically, before Monero came out, not much before, but a little before, and in 2015, Dash started focusing much more on being, a universal kind of money, and kind of the Dash, the name, the logo, digital cast, trying to be a much more just like everyday normie friendly rather than the pigeonhole. And around 2019, I guess, or so, is when there started to become a lot of heat around privacy, and a lot of like delistings or threats or FUD or people dumping on the markets and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of went through a lot of this. And previous people who were involved in, I guess, branding and strategy and stuff for Dash as a whole kind of didn't wanted to severely downplay the privacy side of things and just be like, just not like keep the functionality and keep the tech in, but just not talk about it as much, and hope that regulators and exchanges will be nice. And my humble opinion, that did not work. That backfired massively, because no one cares, except for the customer base, the privacy community, which kind of even allowed FUD to be spread that Dash had removed any such functionality from the protocol when nothing of the sort had happened. And it just ended up kind of alienating friends and not getting new ones. And so that's kind of something that will, the person involved, the leadership involved in that decision got kind of kicked out. So that's got not a thing anymore. But there's kind of it's like the marketing of like how do you position or market yourself in this way, I think is very kind of interesting. And now we see, I guess like Xano picked the right time to just come onto the scene, because we're really riding like, the shadows are the struggles aren't gone, but the shadows are kind of going apart. Privacy is normal. iPhone is advertising. iPhone means privacy and stuff like that. Like things are getting really, I guess, the sun's shining on these kinds of things. So the marketing side kind of makes sense. But maybe in an kind of an ironic thing, if the average Dash user had taking control of marketing over the protocol, we never would have had this kind of weird, vacation from being respected kind of thing that happened for a few years there, which is kind of interesting. Um, Anyone else have something real quick?
So just so I can ask you to clarify. So you're saying that Dash should have leaned into or been proud of the privacy aspects when they're uh, promoting it? Is that what you're getting back to or implying?
Um, Personal opinion, I have to say, because especially when you speak for a decentralized network where I have authority to run the space on this account, but not speak for everyone, right? But I would say yes, or at least should not have been kind of ashamed of the P word. There was even some, there was a lot of saying like trying to downplay this stuff and not just there's not talk about it, which is already, I think, if you don't talk about one of your key features, it's kind of sucks. Like you should talk about anything you're proud of that works. But it's just the actual downplaying of it. So can you imagine if you talked about if you not only did not talk about Thorchain's permissionless swaps, but if you actually talked about, well, it's a mischaracterization that it's completely permissionless because nodes still have the right to come together and halt trading on a chain. So we have safeguards against illicit activity because of that. If you started to downplay the permissionless and decentralization of the network, imagine that kind of disaster that would be. A marketing disaster, in my opinion. Again, there's people might disagree, but yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that would have been a disaster?
No, I agree with you. It's like it's exactly the same thing as being yourself when you're talking to a girl. You'll pretend to be someone else because you want to try and get her on a date or keep dating her or whatever, but it just leads to misery, right? You have to connect with somebody who likes you for you. And same with your customers. You have, if they got to connect with you for your product, what it is, and they got to love it for that, right? If you're trying to sell something to people, it's, you're kind of hiding a feature, and then what happens when they figure it out? Then they leave, and you spent all that time and effort and money on, convincing people to get into your product, only for them to leave. It doesn't. I think that's, yeah, I think that's unwise.
Yeah, I guess the idea was for users to discover the privacy features on their own. But yeah, I mean, talking for personal experience, I didn't even know that Dash still kept their privacy features until like a year ago, So yeah, that was pretty painful.
I mean, there's a real existential threat and reason why you guys kind of had to play it down. I mean, if we're, being completely real about it. And I think that that's partially, understandable. Nobody wanted to get caught up in the crossfire for a long time. And it's still kind of up in the air exactly how privacy is going to be handled. So, I mean, I can't say I blame you guys.
Yeah, definitely. Like the idea made sense as far as like what you're trying to, like the fact that you feel like you have to be careful around this stuff is very understandable. I just personally think the actual strategy of this is like, it like not weighing the pros and cons kind of thing. And maybe there's a lot more there turned out to be a lot more cons, but like also, um, it was, let's just be super honest about that. It was a time of uncertainty, and I still think that in the decentralized exchange world, right, what Thorchain's in, there's a certain level of uncertainty right now. Like there's so much heat that Thorchain got for the Bybit funds going through there and stuff like that, and so much misinformation to fight. And ultimately, crypto laws have not been clear in the slightest up until very recently. And so There were some countries, for example, that had explicit laws. If you have any kind of technology that explicitly helps users stay more private, you're done. But mostly, and this happened a lot in like East Asia, for example, the word didn't translate well into a lot of languages, such as Japanese. It translated as something like dark, and so they just said if you have the p word is what's got you. So we got to kick you off. Sorry. And then there's a lot of other just misunderstanding on the technology. And I know that particularly Zcash and Firo, and I think PivX as well, have been dealing with this in Europe, where MiCA regulations are very clear. They're very clear about, I wouldn't say very clear, they're kind of clear about what is legal and what isn't as far as using privacy tech, under which context, etc. And exchanges have had to, kind of grapple with that. Like a lot are just, we have had exchanges say, "Hey, sorry, due to European regulations, we're gonna have to remove you guys." And I remember just losing my shit on a Friday and then sending them all the stuff from the lawyers and stuff, and then like by Monday, oh yeah, never mind, we can keep you guys. But like and this was like a couple months ago, right? This wasn't that long ago, so this kind of stuff still happens a lot, and yeah, that's I'm sure that's a talk for another day about the whole, you know, dealing with regulations thing. But yeah, as far as just promoting things, I do even remember, um, I got to dig it up at some point, but the Monero account, and Monero is known for the marketing side of Monero is extremely like uh, cypherpunk focused and hardcore and principles focused and like all that kind of stuff. Even the Monero account was saying stuff when Monero was starting to get delisted about like, you can use Monero in a compliant manner, use the view keys, this and that. And like, even they dipped their toes into that messaging a little bit because that was kind of, it was kind of what everyone was sort of doing at the time. But, and of course, as soon as it becomes safe, which I would argue it's already starting to become a lot more safe for privacy and stuff, I think it would make sense to just shout that from the rooftops. And um, again, I don't know if anyone officially or semi-officially involved with Thorchain should do this, but it might make sense for someone. It might make sense to be like, like, you know, I you have to admit some Thorchain community members have highlighted volume going through, even though it was from a source that it was a bit of a spicy source. And at some point, maybe it would make sense for some people. Again, I don't think this. I'm just suggesting it might. It might make sense to market that. Look, we can't stop this kind of happening, even when it's like a bad situation. But anyway, that's to be determined, I'm sure.
I agree. It was bad taste. I was cringing when people were doing that. I mean, yeah, it's in a roundabout way, it is good marketing for Thorchain, but like I don't think we should have been out there celebrating it at the time. That was a goal. But that's unfortunately, people are free to do what they want, right? We can't stop them.
I think that when the opposite happens, that is bad marketing or like a bad image. So when some hacker or whatever bad guy, quote unquote, tries to use a protocol, and it turns out that the protocol can actually freeze the funds, and it turns out that it's not as permissionless as what people thought, then that is definitely a bad look. So you do have the opposite. Yeah.
Well, and same with Thorchain. We just integrated our new wallet called Unstoppable, just integrated Thorchain, and what got them to do it was the whole Bybit press coverage, because they're like, wow, this really is permissionless, and so they wanted it in their wallet. So that was an example of like good marketing that came out of it, which I do ultimately believe is what's going to happen is like AI bots, everyone's going to see that, okay, Thorchain is permissionless. It's in the end, it'll be good. But like, I do agree it's bad taste while it's happening to be running around, telling people about it. Like it's not, it can be done in a more tasteful way, I guess.
Yeah, but that's also a big part of Monero's marketing, for example. So one thing Monero people preach a lot about is that their coin is one of the most used ones in the dark markets. And obviously that's not always the most friendly marketing approach, but it does mean that it is actually decentralized and it's actually permissionless. And if criminals are using it, it means it actually works. So I think there's some room for that, but it's you have to be very careful. But fortunately nowadays, I think especially with the tornado cash rulings, I think things are getting better. And I also just realized that Dash is still on Binance. So I think that I think that makes it the only privacy coin to remain on Binance. So yeah.
Actually, not. Zcash is also on, and Zcash. They listen. Binance. You, they do some strange things. Let's just say, and they introduced this thing where people can vote on which the community votes on delisting assets. It's like Love Island stuff. It's like voting them off. It's kind of weird, but they basically did that, and that was the crux of this exchange only address thing that happened with a lot of privacy coins, where uh, Firo really, really wanted to stay on Binance, and they were going to be removed because, according to MiCA regulations, you cannot have anonymous custodial crypto accounts. And so, in order to be listed on a custodial exchange, you have to be able to verify the sender address to a deposit. And so if you sent from like a shielded address, they couldn't see where it came from necessarily, and that was illegal, I guess. So the Firo team, from my understanding, developed this thing called an exchange-only address, which could only receive from a transparent address, so you could always show where it came from. And then Zcash also added something like that. I believe PivX did too, and it was mostly to remain on Binance in Europe. Now, the Binance later ended up just removing Firo anyway. Thanks, guys, because probably because the privacy um, the privacy excuse was a good way to get a monitoring tag on them and then let the community vote to remove them. Zcash received more votes to be removed than Firo, but Firo got removed, and now Zcash did not, and they removed the monitoring tag. So Zcash is all good to go, I guess, because they have more powerful backers or something. But it is kind of a very strange episode in European crypto history for sure. But yes, Dash remains on a lot of things, and I think that that's kind of you know, the other thing is Dash, of course, got on the Maya protocol, which is a fork of Thorchain, friendly fork of Thorchain, and Zcash recently got added to it as well. And Zcash is also a near intense, so it's just getting on as many dexes as possible is kind of a great strategy to sort of avoid that, and kind of allows you to more accurately market the strengths of your protocol, right? If you have privacy functions, if you offer this for your users and you can't really have it be censored, um, it helps to be in a position of power to be able to say that, instead of being like, well, if I speak too loudly, Binance is going to whack us and then we're completely gone, you know?
Yeah. So it's also, so apart from privacy regulations getting a bit better, or at least calming down, it's also the state of the central exchange is just a whole different picture than 5 years ago. So also helps.
I want to
Yes,
add
absolutely.
something to the, if criminals use it, works. Like I totally agree, and I get it. I'm probably all of us on the call here do, right? All those of us that really understand the system, how everything works, we understand that comment and what it means. And so technically, in theory, that should be fantastic marketing, right? But this is where the emotional side of humans get involved, is that, the average person, Auntie Mary, the next 80% of people coming into crypto, they hear criminals use it and they pee their pants, right? They, oh, that must be bad, right? And they don't want to touch it. Even though it is proof that the tech works and is good, they're making an emotional response to that message and they want to avoid it. So, it's interesting how, I just want to highlight that, and how marketing and sales work is, even though that criminals using it is actually technically a good a good message, it can backfire. So it's just the nuances and intricacies of marketing.
That would be funny, by the way. To like the criminals using a thing is only an advertisement for being censorship resistant or private. Uh, can you imagine? It's like marketing, like this is the preferred work boot of muggers and thieves. So this is the best, the best sandwich for carjacking. That stuff would be pretty funny.
But in theory, it'd be true, right?
I mean,
So
maybe
yeah.
like because the thing about criminals is, as in not we're not just talking, talking very specifically like bad people kind of thing. Uh, they're not necessarily known for their options of tools, right? So if you have a terrible user experience and you're like, well, criminals use us, it's like, well, that's not an advertisement for the user experience of the tool necessarily, or the reliability, or a bunch of other things, but it is for that people will let criminals use it, right? So there's that. But like also like who cares what the favorite sandwich of the mafia is? Like, are they known for their sandwiches? Are they known for like making money selling illegal things and you know shaking people down? It's just like, now if you're saying this is the preferred baseball bat of the mafia, it works for enforcing stuff, so therefore it's a great tool for actual baseball. That might be a different argument, but I'm sure we could do all kinds of funny tricks on that too.
Yeah, it
Can you
depends.
imagine if someone marketed like the number one preferred exchange or privacy protocol of North Korea?
Well, I mean,
Well, it's
yeah,
Thorchain.
Listen,
I didn't want to
I
say
put that
it.
meme that I saw a quick swap post in some other space. I put that meme up on the jumbotron up here. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on the angle you want to make. Because originally, this whole thing was about permissionless money, right? So, you know, I don't think all criminals, are morally bad. Um, so I think it's, pretty good marketing if you have some, for example, some kind of free speech protocol, like I don't know, like a Tor network. If you say that people in the most oppressive regimes, their default choice is Tor, then obviously that's good marketing. Um, so yeah, I mean, it just depends on the angle you want to take and uh, how close you want to be to the cypherpunk roads.
But you brought up something interesting, which I think is important, how close you want to be to the cypherpunk roots. And in my opinion, that's actually key and critical for any kind of almost at this juncture for crypto, is that everyone's talking about Bitcoin especially being hijacked by TradFi. I think the real cryptos that are going to survive the test of time here are the ones that stay true to the crypto cypherpunk ethos. Yeah, the ones that cave to the TradFi people might have some short-term love, but they'll just get absorbed into TradFi. I think the real value add for any crypto is building the new system, right? Building the true DeFi is the replacement for TradFi. So, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of teams they're going to cave to the TradFi influencers, but I think long term, the ones that stay true to the cypherpunk ideals are the ones that will win.
Yeah, definitely agree on that part. Dr. K.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about cypherpunk ideals, one of the things that like we're talking about here is exchanges and requirements to be on exchanges. Um, it's to do it now, you have KYC with sort of the token issuer. They have to do KYB with any sort of businesses that they interact with. They have to do KYC with their own customers. They have to have their own like KYC policy, and then you have to have KYT which is know your transaction, to be listed on certain exchanges. And all of this, at the end of the day, I think is antithetical to money, and is certainly antithetical to the cypherpunk consumption of money. Right? If we go back 30 years, we didn't have any of these, FinCEN laws and regulations and SAR reporting that we do now. And in some ways, I think it's like violations in the United States of, Fourth Amendment to be doing this sort of thing, but it's also just sort of law enforcement being lazy, right? Like they had tools to figure out, who the bad guys were before they could trace money around the world and get every bank to do reporting. I mean, you go back to the days of the 80s and 90s when cocaine was sort of the predominant drug in the financial circles in the U.S. I mean, Pablo Escobar was one of the biggest, I think, countries technically by GDP, like as a dude, and that money was flowing, and that money was flowing through banks, right? Um, and they could still figure out who Pablo Escobar was and where those flows were happening, and they could use things besides the money system to track it down and limit that criminal activity. They don't need the money; they're just being lazy about it. But fundamentally, I think they've decided they're going to go down this road regardless. And really, what's incumbent upon us as protocol developers and designers are to create systems that can be completely independent of the current financial system. So when we talk about exchanges, I don't see exchanges as an integral part of crypto. If you have a good crypto protocol that can function as money, you don't need to convert your crypto via a centralized exchange into dollars ever. That shouldn't be the requirement. You should just be able to spend it directly. And so sexes are not meant to be permanent solutions. They're meant to be bridges to let liquidity flow from the old system to the new. And once sufficient liquidity has flowed to the new system, we're meant to burn the bridges. Like we're meant to disconnect. We're meant to not have this tie back. So if there's two things that you must achieve to be able to do this. One is you have to make it so that, functionally speaking, from a technical perspective, you can get the scale, speed to be money, right? And then you got to get the adoption over that hump. You have to build the tooling. You have to make it so every crypto experience feels like a Web 2 experience, right? But once you get there, you got to throw the napalm on that bridge and let it burn.
Do you though? Do you think? By the way, I agree with you. I think it's a one-way road. But if crypto is that much better, you can just leave the bridge. No one's going to want to go back. You don't necessarily have to blow it up.
Yeah. No, fair statement. Actually, you make a very fair point. So what we're saying is because people are using the centralized exchanges, the protocols that we built are not yet adequate.
So what do you? I'm curious you and everyone else, your thoughts on what is going to push everyone into crypto? Is it going to be because crypto is that much better and they're just naturally attracted to it and want to get into it? Or is it because TradFi is going to get so much worse and more difficult that they're just going to have to move into crypto because they have no other choice? Or maybe a
TradFi already
combination of the
is
two.
so much worse. I don't think that's our issue. I think we're doing pretty good on that one.
Maybe. I think it depends on the type of use case that you have, right? You can say, I have Bitcoin and I live off my Bitcoin, but anybody who's living off their Bitcoin, quote unquote, is like, I have this Gemini card and I stick it into the Visa MasterCard rails, which is making a spot sale of my Bitcoin every time I want to buy a coffee, right? On a centralized exchange, which I don't hold the keys to. So, I don't think crypto
Some
has gotten
people,
us
for
to the
sure.
point. Sorry, what?
That's definitely some people for sure.
If I could jump in
Yeah,
on the
well,
point of, because it's been brought up several times today, that one of the phrases was DEXs will never be as efficient as centralized exchanges. And I'll push back on that. I think, for one, let's we should never doubt technology and humans' ability to solve problems. And yes, while at their kind of foundational level, blockchains are like inefficient databases, inefficient computational systems, etc. But we could improve on that. And let's like not even get into the tech of that, because there are tons of people trying to solve this already. I mean, what is the price you put on freedom? What is the price you put on privacy? What is the price you put on property, your assets? Because how many people have lost their assets putting them on centralized exchanges or in banks? See, Cyprus, Greece, all these things that have happened in the past. The U.S. confiscating people's gold, you know. So I don't know. I mean, if I would actually argue that by definition, if there are users of DEXs now, and if that number is increasing, then some people are actually saying that DEXs are more, maybe efficient's not the word, but are a better value for them. Maybe it's a little more of a cost, maybe it's a little slower, maybe there's a little more slippage, but they get their privacy, they get their freedom, they get their self custody, and so those things matter too. We can't discount those. But let's just say it wasn't about that, and we're just purely talking about the cost of swaps and these things. Yeah, generally sexes are cheaper, but I actually think we can get down cheaper than sexes. There's really interesting things you can do with ZK rollups. One of my colleagues, actually my co-founder of QuickSwap, is building a DEX that is basically a SEX, but you have your own custody. So it's a DEX, but it has a full SEX experience. There's no smart contracts. It's all like any programming language you could use, and you could just build Binance, but the users never give up custody of their assets. And so, yeah, I wouldn't underestimate our ability to solve problems in the world.
So I have a couple comments here. Ultimately, when you're talking about like privacy versus and self sovereignty, right? The reason people don't choose it, besides potentially crypto not quite being there in some of these use cases, is because it's a short term versus long term thing, right? So it's like I can take a little bit of extra cost or a little bit of friction up front, right, to maybe get a tail benefit in the long term, which most people don't think about. Most people in this world are short term thinkers, right? So because there's like marginally worse friction, marginally worse cost, that's why they don't do it. So the people to adopt crypto aren't going to be the ones who are it has to be use cases wherein the benefit, the immediate benefit, not the tail benefits, is greater than the marginal friction to adopting the system. So like when you look at crypto users, you got to look at users who are in nation states with hyperinflating currencies. You have to look at users who are disenfranchised purposely from the current financial system. If it's gray markets like weed dealers, or even like with Quai, we have this application called Kipper that allows people to tip on different social platforms. It's like an overlay, so you can be on X and you can see people on X and you can tip them in the application, but it's all happening on the blockchain. But like those are disenfranchised users because they're deplatformed, they're censored. 50 to 60% of revenue goes to the platform, not the content creators. So when you're talking about like who wants crypto, who can use crypto, we all see on this call, I think, the long-term tails, and that's why we're interested in it. But to get mass adoption, most people don't think of that long term. You have to be addressing a short-term pain point that's bigger than the friction of using the system. And then the thing that we can do as technologists is make it so that the technology minimizes that friction. So, if you want to see something cool, you should check out Kipper, because on Quai Network, you'll interact with Twitter. You'll be doing things using a blockchain, but it feels like it's integrated experience. It doesn't feel like it's laggy, and it's a proof of work system. It's not Solana,
right? It's doing these things, and from your perspective, it looks perfectly Web 2 with none of the jankiness of Web 3. But if you can get your blockchains to that level, it's so much easier to build applications because you're not dancing around the fact that the blockchains are worse than the traditional financial system. But once you get to the point that you have a blockchain like that, I would also say that even things like dexes versus sexes, I think I can actually make a compelling argument about how proof of work is the way to do ordering of a any sort of execution engine, including an order book, in the most efficient way. So I personally believe that DEXs are actually the most efficient long-term outcome of how you do trades, period. Like across the board, right? And the way this manifests in centralized exchanges or even TradFi is high frequency trading, or what we say in um, blockchain land, we call it MEV. But fundamentally, MEV and high frequency trading are the consequences of having to resolve an ordering problem. But the most fair way to resolve an ordering problem is proof of work. So I think that there's like a there's a provable argument you can make that DEXs will ultimately be the most efficient and fair way to do ordering of any execution, including trading.
Is it proof of work specifically, or is it UTXO? This is interesting.
Sorry, can you say that?
Is it proof of work specifically, or is it UTXO versus state? I'm curious. This is an interesting
It's
topic,
proof of
though.
work specifically. So proof of work has this interesting property where the proofs make it so that given a geography, a a system where your participants are separated by space, and you have latent communication between them, it has this property of being able to fairly order events, even though you have this distributed overlay. And that property, I believe, is unique to proof of work specifically.
Is that
And
is that partially just because, like Bitcoin, for example, with the 10-minute block? Or I guess
um,
no, that actually hurts. That would make MEV worse, right?
no, it would potentially make MEV worse. So Bitcoin is definitely like proof of work 0.1. If you do proof of work perfectly well, we have something in Quai we call POEM, or proof of entropy minima. But it's a better way to do proof of work, and it allows you to have 5-second block times. And the block time is technically like an independent parameter here, but if you have 5-second block times, you can get cache like properties around it. The thing that Poem does for you is it allows you to deterministically have a fork choice rule, so you don't have situations where you get sort of an orphan or an uncle, and you need the next block to resolve what the choice is. So Poem gives you determinism in that choice, but what it also does is if you're that determinism is what gives you causal ordering in a latent system, and it's fair causal ordering. So if you have a causal choice, you can get causal ordering, no matter what the latency is. So then you just have to make that incentive compatible, and Bob's your uncle. But I firmly believe that proof of work is the way that you get fair ordering in latent systems. And I also think it's very analogous to how events in reality actually work in order. There's strong physics correlations to well-designed proof of work systems.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, so I mean that kind of goes a little bit into the weeds on one of the potential ways that crypto does get an advantage over other things. The burn the ships kind of thing, I think, is is an interesting mindset, and definitely I kind of view my kind of, I guess, promotional marketing, whatever idea on cryptos as their core protocols is um, tie them back to the base, um, like the base, why this matters, why this is better than other things, and then kind of go out from there to tie into specific use cases like, oh my, like you can't, like your remittances suck, let's use this, or you can't buy weed with it, let's use that, or those kinds of things, or political activist and you don't want to get censored, or those kinds of things. And just those are core use cases and people and things, and just drill down and push those forward. The thing about the rest of the space, like the tradfi world, um I kind of think that like it's very important for the business elements of these ecosystems to integrate however they can, like as a kind of matter of like, you know, convenience and getting and onboarding new users and stuff. Like, hey, get on Robinhood. Why not? Why not get into Venmo? Things like that. But it's kind of a little bit of like a sideshow, because that's not the, you're not trying to be in everywhere. If you succeed, you will be everywhere, kind of. But you're not trying to. You're trying to push, and I guess this kind of comes full circle. Kitten's still there, yeah. To the whole like Chain having its own interface type deal, is you do kind of want to at the same time dictate what the ideal experience is that you're going for, and whatever that is something that everyone who imitates will kind of be guided by. So for example, if it's just like one of many swap rails maybe in the background of some main thing, or every, let's just say every centralized exchange gets tired of managing their own liquidity and all the other stuff and KYCing people and just all the other nonsense, and just decides to plug into exclusively DEX rails, and Thorchain's one of them. The misalignment of principles might still hit, where you just have an exchange that wants to make money. Again, nothing wrong with that, but then the experience by which people use these radical technologies ends up kind of going seeking comfort, which comfort is TradFi and the old world, and you want to keep pushing it forward. So you want to have like an idealized experience and push people towards that. And if people are like, oh, I don't want to self custody because I'm a grandma and I would rather have an exchange to call and yell at or something, okay, fine. If someone wants to make the grandma wallet that doesn't, although I'd argue that grandma can self custody and use crypto, if you just build it right. In the meantime, there's nothing wrong with people building services that do that, and there's nothing wrong with giving a little bit of attention to be like, hey, guess what? We're on the grandma platform. We got a Facebook page, whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with that, but that shouldn't be like, yeah, let's lean into that and just let that be our number one thing. And that's kind of, I have to say, one of my criticisms of modern Bitcoin is, I guess, that the wages of the lack of definite direction there, because sort of like, you like sailors like the fox in the hen house a little bit. You let this guy who's about pumping numbers up and making a bunch of fiat, you let him become the dominant Bitcoin person. I call him the CEO of Bitcoin, which is, it annoys people, and that's why I do it. But you basically let him be the number one figure for Bitcoin, the number one influencer, and for the most part, what used to be this like awesome cypherpunk revolution kind of thing has become about like, let's get the money, let's get the number going up. We don't care about self custody, we don't care about, and now we're doing these weird derivative things that have nothing to do with that. And maybe that's the kind of like the bad case scenario. Whereas the good case scenario is, I don't know, let's just give an example like Monero. Like, who is going to Sailorify Monero? Probably it'll be difficult because of just how hard they position themselves in the opposite direction. Or who's going to Sailorify something like Dash if we have our own wallet that and our own experience that is self-custodial, decentralized to the max, and is just, that's what we promote first and foremost. And if someone wants to add it to Venmo or something, that's their choice, but it's still, we direct the narrative. So I guess let's just pose this question then. If should crypto protocols market themselves directly, have a hand on marketing directly, is in order to prevent narrative capture and the ecosystem being bent in the wrong direction, kind of like the salarification of Bitcoin as an example. Is that, who wants to say yes or no on those? Dr. K, jump into it.
Yeah, I think Sailor at the end of the day, he helps the price go up, but in terms of the ethos, I don't think he actually is the one killing the ethos. I think the ethos died maybe a long time ago, right? BlackRock creating ETFs, majority of people custodying Bitcoin on Coinbase. You know, I think that's the slow march towards centralization, eventually fractional reserving of Bitcoin via Bitcoin paper. So I wouldn't necessarily blame like Sailor here or MicroStrategy. I think they're a symptom of Bitcoin's shortcomings to work as an independent system. So if Bitcoin was better as money and there was less need to custodian it, and there was sort of the grandma form of it, and it could be used at a coffee shop with no intermediaries, and it looked just like swiping a debit card or a chip card or tapping your phone, I think there would be a lot less centralizing tendencies of it. Um, so, like, I don't blame Sailor here. I blame the protocol not, and even the protocol changing, right? Like, at the end of the day, a proof of work system is meant to be static. It's meant to be a protocol. So the fact that Bitcoin hasn't gone to 5-second block times and figured out how to work like cash and add privacy features and native stable tokens and all of this is technically a feature of proof of work, which Bitcoin brought to bear. So it's not even a shortcoming in Bitcoin. It's really that given the characteristics that it launched with, this is the outcome. And it's the store value and it's digital gold esque, and that's great. But it certainly isn't the freedom tool that we originally thought it might be. It's certainly not peer to peer digital cash. And there's certainly a need for that if we want to remain free individuals in a money that's digital, in a society that uses digital money in a digital world. So to say that Bitcoin is an end all be all, I think that's where we do ourselves great disservice. And so, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with Sailor because I think he is the market achieved outcome of what the protocol is.
I will jump in and say I think it's an odd take, and I understand there's lots of people with this take, but I think it's an odd take that because like BlackRock wants to buy Bitcoin or Michael Saylor or they want to build derivatives on top of it or these things that somehow has changed the ethos of Bitcoin. But the ethos of Bitcoin is and has always been whoever wants to use it can use it, whether you're black, white, gay, straight, poor, rich, whatever, you can use it. And I think it's a little bit, maybe I shouldn't use this word, but I'll use it anyways because we're all big boys and I'm not trying to offend people. But it's a little bit hypocritical for us to judge the banking system and say, they've weaponized the dollar, that's why the dollar is going to fail, and because they're not allowing other countries to use it. And earlier I was talking about, and I didn't say these words exactly, but I would say that I actually think we should let everyone use dollars or Bitcoin or whatever it is. Terrorists, drug addicts, drug dealers, whatever the fuck, whoever it is, that's because money should be neutral and it shouldn't care about those things. So to me, I think it would be hypocritical for us to say we don't want BlackRock to use this thing and we don't want people to make new products on top of this thing or whatever. I think that's kind of silly. We want everyone to make every type of product on it. Now we can fight for, hey, don't use that BlackRock product. That's silly. You're going to get burnt and you probably will. But I think if they want to build stuff on it, more power to them. And we all benefit because now they're out there marketing freedom money, whether you think it's as free for this sake, for this exact argument or not. But they're out. How did you ever think, or could we ever have hoped or believed that we would have BlackRock out there selling our praises? I mean, I'm quite happy for it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like the moralist here and differentiate BlackRock as an entity from any other entity. It's supposed to be open money. So like if North Korea wants to use it, if BlackRock wants to use it, if Iran wants to use it, while simultaneously the U.S. is reserving it, it is speaking to its decentralized, like at least monetary policy. My criticism of it is the fact that a majority of users want to seek exposure it through a custodian like BlackRock. So it's not BlackRock itself; it's that
Well, maybe
we didn't
can
get
be
the people to
precise with
not
our
want to use
words here.
BlackRock,
What do
right?
you mean,
So
though? Because it's not the majority of users holding Bitcoin in centralized exchanges. That's not the case at all.
it's
Are you saying that you think the majority
enough
of
that
Bitcoin is
it's.
held in centralized exchanges? I just want to make sure we're clear on what you're saying.
I'm not saying the. If you said okay, so there's amount of Bitcoin by value, there's amount of Bitcoin by user, and you could look at that over any given year. My statements would be that in the last 1 to 2 years, both the amount of Bitcoin by account as well as the amount of Bitcoin by value in total growth has happened through centralized custodians.
I think I saw a number, and I don't know, I'll try to pull it up now, but I think I saw a number that over time, actually, like Bitcoin held in centralized custody has actually been going down. So I don't know, maybe there's a blip because of the new ETFs or something you're saying, but I think over time, it's actually less has been held on centralized exchanges and in centralized custody.
I think over the total history, that's a true statement. I don't think that's true over the last couple of years, but we could
Fair
try
enough.
to find data on that. Yeah.
I'm on it.
I was
Give me just a minute.
just gonna
Yep,
say
yep, yep,
Nicole's
yep.
pretty quick on the
I'm already
AI
on it.
question.
Just give me 1 sec.
Nerdgirl.ai.
Thank you.
You just got to hit her with the right
But
prompt.
if it's a plurality or not, the fact that we can agree there's a large number, right? Um, and I think that there's things that you could do to make Bitcoin. There's ways that Bitcoin could have been designed differently. I mean, obviously, given all this hindsight that we have, but if it had slightly different properties, the incentive to use those custodians would be lessened. And when we're talking about having it be freedom money and not, you know, the nouveau form of gold that gets manipulated like the LBMA has managed to do with paper gold, um, and reinforcing individual liberties, right? The more we can put it into people's hands, the less the aggregate market is affected by those things. So
All right, I've got data. Okay, so it is a rough estimate, but in the last 1 to 2 years, from July 2023 to July 2025, approximately 50 to 70% of new Bitcoin acquisitions were made through centralized exchanges or custodians.
That's an interesting
So that's
data
an
point.
interesting data point, but I think that's a little bit like that doesn't tell the story because basically we opened it up finally for these institutions to have these ETFs, right? They weren't allowed before, and so now they're allowed, and okay, now the people that were waiting for those can get in. But shouldn't we look at like a longer term time horizon? Do you have any? Can you find some data on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I can find data on that, but we have to consider also that like the largest holders of Bitcoin were probably buying or mining it in a time when centralized custodians and holders were not an option. So, yes, I will find that data and I'll be right back.
Yes, and
Thank
that's
you.
another interesting point, by the way, that I think like Bitcoin's supply distribution, I think is going to get very interesting and the post quantum era because oh, I would posit that a very large chunk of Bitcoin is lost and gone forever, and therefore it's in the perma hodl. So as far as like how much Bitcoin is held by custodians is probably of actual Bitcoin that people living have access to, it's probably a significantly higher percentage. Of course, that's conjecture. And at some point when there will be the ability to, attack and drain addresses with quantum computing, then I think that a lot of these dead addresses, as it were, the perma hodls will become a little bit more obvious. And I know Dr. K is just chiming, just biting at the, chomping at the bit to answer this one.
Yeah. There's a whole debate there. Certainly unhashed. Pay to public keys are most vulnerable to quantum if quantum does come about. I would personally say, quantum is going to be like a fusion thing. It's always going to be 20 years away. But Bitcoin is particularly vulnerable on those early pay to public key addresses. I would also say it would be interesting, whoever's collecting this data. I would also contend if you actually looked maybe from like 2015 even to say 22 before the ETFs started coming about. Once we had like more trustable centralized exchanges available, I would suspect that you would actually see the percentage per year in new Bitcoin acquisitions going up every year to centralized custodians, even over that time frame.
All right, I've got the data. You want me to jump in here? Okay.
Right.
So here we go. Combining ETFs and public companies that hold and manage Bitcoin and institutional custodian, or so ETFs, public companies, institutional custodians, and centralized exchanges, about 25 to 30% of Bitcoin's total supply is held. So some figures suggest to go about 30% because that's right in the middle. And then as far as percentage of self-custodied Bitcoin that's lost forever, that number ranges from 18% to 37%. And the most commonly cited statistic is 6 million Bitcoin, which is 29%, is the most common figure based on unmoved coins or lost keys.
I was more curious about the trajectory or the change over time.
Okay,
Are more people doing self custody over like a 10-year period,
it's a
or are less
we're at a
people?
7-year low as far as centralized custody goes.
So it's been getting better.
Been getting better, but that's only regarding centralized exchanges, given that ETFs and public companies and institutional custodians are now able to hold cryptocurrency only within the last 2 years. It's difficult to say the trajectory. Just given that information. Like I did ask the question and it says difficult to project the trajectory because we don't know what will happen in the
But over
future.
7 years, it's at an all-time low.
Over 7 years, the amount held on centralized exchanges is at a low.
We have the data for ETFs. We should be able to plug AI should be able to figure that out.
Is the amount held? Well, I don't think that once it's in an ETF, it can become self-custodied.
No, I'm saying that ETFs count as centralized custody.
Yeah, but they actually separate it, centralized exchanges, ETFs and public companies, and institutional custodians. Those are 3 different categories. So they do distinguish them from each other because centralized exchanges can be taken into self-custody, and I don't think ETFs and public companies can be taken into self-custody because that's like paper Bitcoin. But let me ask, I'll come right back.
So to sort of go back to the original point that brought up this discussion about the custody thing, I absolutely agree that anything should be for like anything decentralized should be for anyone, and we shouldn't have a say necessarily in who uses it. That being, and so therefore, if BlackRock wants to buy up anything, let them, kind of thing. On the other hand, as far as like the primary narrative around the primary marketing narrative, it's whoever wants to market it however they want, obviously can. But if that becomes the dominant narrative, it's because someone else wasn't doing the opposite. So the kind of cypherpunk ethos rather than NGU should have sort of been pushed a little bit more, and possibly again discussion point, right? But it kind of does bring to the thing of um, people's understanding of what something is has a lot to do with um, kind of what they've done. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but like the what people's understanding of the positioning of what the purpose of this technology is has a lot to do with whoever's leading the narrative. And if you lead it, I guess, actively in like especially in like a cypherpunk direction, then when non-cypherpunks come in and do stuff, then it doesn't really matter as much because you've already established that this is the official, even if it's not there's no such thing as official really in decentralized systems, but this is the official raison d'être of this technology. So yeah.
All right, I've got the answer. So while Bitcoin on centralized exchanges has declined to a 7-year low, um, Bitcoin in ETF holdings has sharply increased. It's rapidly increased. So since their approval in January of 2024, US spot Bitcoin ETFs have seen consistent inflows, accumulating 1.23 million Bitcoin, 6.2% of the total supply by July of 2025. For example, BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust holds over 700,000 Bitcoin with 4.13 billion in net inflows in just 13 trading days in June 2025, including 1.15 billion for IBIT alone. Weekly inflows reached 2.1 billion in late 2024, indicating strong demand. And the trajectory says that ETF holdings are growing steadily, driven by institutional and retail investors seeking regulated exposure. Posts on X highlight IBIT's rapid accumulation, suggesting ETFs are absorbing a larger share of Bitcoin supply over time.
I think I'm just looking at overall, and when I'm asking AI, it's saying that self custody has been growing on a long term time horizon, even including ETFs. But I don't know. I just asked it a more simple question. It does give nuances, but overall, the hard number of and percentage wise, we have more self custody over time, is what I'm seeing, even with ETFs. Maybe there's short-term blips or something, but anyways, I don't, I just think that's actually just slightly interesting and probably a good sign for us, who consider ourselves cypherpunks and care about those values at least.
So we're probably I'm kind of feeling like the steam kind of like dissipating a little bit on this whole topic. Um, any other big thoughts that on crypto protocols marketing themselves or taking a direction as opposed to just letting other things like third parties do it?
I think it's probably already pretty clear, but this whole thing about who does the marketing, that makes it clear that if no one's doing it from like quote unquote official standpoint, then it leaves a vacuum for to allow these voices to fill in. And so you mentioned it some time ago. You mentioned Monero, and I say this as not as Zano community manager, but as a Monero community member. Um, the fact that Monero doesn't really have like an official marketing team, something like that, uh, has meant over the years that just whoever has, either the biggest YouTube channel and talks about Monero or the biggest Twitter account or the most reach, those end up becoming the face of the project. And I think that's that can lead to some dangerous stuff. So it's not a matter of you can just forget about it, but you do run into that kind of risks.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting thing to bring up because a lot of the kind of criticism on trying to market stuff has come from some early members of that community in the early days, not so much now. And it's been kind of eye-opening the longer I've been in the space, the more I've run into PR firms who have directly worked with, I guess, Monero core team members in the past to do press releases about Monero, for example, and influencers who've been sponsored by them, other things like that. Kind of a little bit of the opposite of what's been told, although, it's the team never had I guess, a block reward allocation for any of this stuff. I'm sure it all comes from, donations and things like that. But it's I would call that probably the most one of the most aggressively marketed projects in the entire space, I would say, as far as like across the board. Uh, but then at the same time, because of the lack of officialness, I guess, in some ways, you make a good point about the loudest voices being the ones who kind of direct for the, direct the narrative. And I mean, obviously, like the CEO of Edge Wallet, Paul Pui, great dude, hardcore privacy advocate. He's a big Monero fan and he talks about it a lot. And I think he's a great messenger for that. And then you, at the same time, though, the most popular right now, I would say, is well, it's hard to say if it's the most popular, but one of the top Monero influencers who has a lot of impressions, at least, is a fellow who's very open about um, anti-Semitism and white supremacy and things like that in a in a positive way. Like he's very much for those things, and if you look, it's kind of interesting to look if you look of any major pro Zcash post or Zcash announcement, you'll find a ton of, I guess, negative comments from people from the Monero community, specifically anti-Semitic ones, and saying like a Zionist chain, or all this kind of stuff. It's very interesting to see, and that is kind of another sort of Bitcoin like in um, the way the narrative has sort of gotten to a place where a lot of people might not appreciate that. I know that there's lots of people, for example, of Jewish descent in the Monero community, and some really nice, respectful people who are prominent voices. But then, unfortunately, some of the narratives kind of gotten away from them a little bit, and there's a little bit of an internal um, battle, I guess, going on over that right now. But it's just kind of interesting to see. See, you have your hand up here, Digital Gold Talk. Welcome. You want to introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, and then whatever you're going to say.
Hey, thanks, Joel. So, yeah, I'm John Gotts, and I've been spending a lot of time with AI trying to figure out fair value for coins based on comparing to a standard, to a benchmark. All that said, marketing is really important for a coin to not only control their message, but to let people know what their utility is. And you guys have touched on all of these things. And the engineers, I totally hear you. My father was an engineer since 67. He still programs and he's in his 80s. We don't want to market things, right? But we want to focus on making it great and solving a problem. And I get that because half my brain works that way. If you don't market it and someone else takes over the message, that's one thing that can go wrong. You also will potentially get away from the ethos that was created by the developers who created the project in the first place. So that's always worrisome. You also have to remember that when you don't market, then you end up with a problem like Blackcoin. Blackcoin in February of 2014 was the first to publish a working proof of stake. It's never gone down. They implemented SegWit. They have adjustable block sizes. It's a great product. It trades $35 a day. Has a market cap of like $1 million. It's a failure, but it's a great product. See the problem? So when we say that Bitcoin did not have any marketing, that's like saying Google didn't have any marketing. It didn't need to. It had evangelists. It had people going out and talking about it. The media loved it. It was their darling, especially when it was about to go public. The same with Bitcoin now. All the media loves it. It's the darling. Everything else has a shadow cast on it. It's a shitcoin. Even with Ripple and Litecoin being covered by Fidelity. What does Fidelity say in their thin, teeny little pamphlet on Litecoin? But that it's a really good on-ramp to get more Bitcoin. I'm not kidding. That's what it says. And that it hasn't hit no high, so it's probably not something you want to invest in now, so you should keep looking at Bitcoin. It literally says that in the Litecoin Fidelity report. So I think it's really critical that all of these, what I call digital gold commodities, these things that people call altcoins, I'm talking about the layer ones. I think it's really critical that if there's anything left of, or if they have a thriving either way community, and I'm speaking specifically of the developers that have their hand on the code, that have the message of their coin and carry the ethos of their coin community. It's really critical that they figure out how to market and they figure out how to get people to know that not only their product exists, but why it exists and why it's important, and to do it in an organic way, not the KOLs, just as I heard on this call as well, or maybe it was on a call I joined Joel in the other day listening, that you pay for these KOLs and you've got traffic until you quit paying. But if you go out there and you have a great product and you can create evangelists around that product so that those people become your salespeople, the KOLs will beg you to come on their show. So that's all I have to say. I think that it's really critical that every foundation figures out a way to get funded so that it can spend the money on marketing, so it can control its message so that others don't, so that it cannot become black coin and be left behind even with great technology, because you can have great utility, but without adoption, you don't get the developer ecosystem growing. You don't get the transactions and the transaction value. You don't get the network power score, which is to say what it costs to 51% attack you, whether you're proof of stake or proof of work. That comes down to everything I just listed. And you have none of that if people don't know you exist, but you've got to control the market. So I've been here 2 hours, but I wanted to say that. So guys, thank you for everything I learned from you today. And I'm going to jump out of here, but that was my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice. Thanks for being here. That's a great, kind of overview of that whole thing. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how like attitudes have shifted to realities, right? Just like, do you need VCs? It's like, well, you need money of some kind to make things work. Same thing with marketing. Same things with everything else. Um, it is kind of so as we sort of get to the end of it, the thing is, I'm just so tempted because we're like who wants to stick around for 13 more minutes so we actually hit the 3 hour mark because of
Let's do it.
We better
yeah
do it.
Sure.
yeah
We have
my
the Bid Angel spaces coming up after, so we could
yeah
hit 3 hours. And if anyone wants to come there, you're all welcome.
sounds good to me. We'll definitely do that. It's kind of funny. I think there was like one space that was like 2 hours that we did, and then there was like or three maybe when I was traveling that had to be shorter because I just was at a conference and couldn't just hang out on a space all the time. But other than that, almost all these have hit the 3 hour mark, some 3.5 hour.
Yeah, you know
Uh,
what's funny? I think we did one. I think the last week was 4 hours actually.
was it really? I'm
I
actually
don't
gonna look
know.
that.
Let
I'm
me
gonna
look.
look that up
Yeah.
real quick. And it's, it's on that subject. I might as well give a shout out to my good old buddy Vlad Kostia of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, and he like I don't know if it's like started fancying himself the Joe Rogan of crypto first, and then it just snowballed from there. But he does long shows. I just saw what's his name?
3.5. I just looked 3.5.
Nice. Yeah,
But
he just had Rarar of the formerly the Monero core team on his podcast for 5 hours straight. I think I did listen to the whole thing. He also had Amir Taki on for like 8 hours,
Dude, Amir is the best.
and like 8 hours is a long time to do a video podcast, much less a space. Like like space is easier, and I kind of think that's a little freaking excessive. However, I do kind of want to beat the all-time record.
Yeah.
As an endurance athlete myself, I might as well just try to be on and just like people don't realize I got a bucket down below between my legs here just in case, and like I just don't even get up and just like strap in for the long haul. I wonder if
Is
there's a
there a
prize.
world record for the longest space?
24 hours.
Um, wait, did he go? Did Dr. K go? I think
Yeah,
he
he's
dropped
been
out.
gone for a little bit.
He, when I actually saw him in person the first time, before I met him in person, when I actually saw his face, he was on hour 20 or so of a 24-hour straight live stream for the Kwai stuff. So I'm sure there's a longer record than that out there somewhere, but he did a 24-hour straight live stream, which is pretty nuts.
Yeah. But so what's funny, okay, Joelle, I want to tell you this. So the quick swap, the aggregated, which typically runs longer than 3 hours, actually, we're gonna cut it to 2 hours. And it's funny because I think, Rock, what do you think? You think we'll probably go over 2 hours pretty regularly?
Probably every time.
Yeah. Yeah, we go over 3 hours almost every time now.
I think by setting it to 2 hours instead of 3 hours, we'll just kind of condense the excitement a bit, and then what'll happen is instead of setting it for 3 hours and going 3.5 to 4, we'll set it for 2 and go, 2.5 to 3, three and
Yeah.
a half.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Time
my
flies when we're having
philosophy.
fun.
Absolutely. And my philosophy on these kinds of spaces, because obviously I'm a big fan of super short form TikTok style content as well. But for this venue of thing, I kind of feel like I have to hit the hour mark in order for it to be not kind of a failure. Like, and then 2 hours is like, well, we had an okay space. This is like 1 hour is like we survived. 2 hours is like, okay, that was good enough, I guess, but let's just keep it so people want to keep coming in and talking. And then for that you need to start to exceed the 2 hour mark, especially get into the three or so. But also just like the cadence of, for example, like Joe Rogan podcasts tend to not go that much past 3.5 hours. Also, this space tends to just do the same kind of a thing. It's like around this time it starts to like wear off, and maybe it's because Rock's on the space a lot, and then the Bit Angels one crops up, and then he has to leave, and then that just kills the space. Or maybe it's just a natural kind of vibe to it.
Rock brings the fire. The song says it all.
Yes, definitely. He brings the fire
Sometimes,
and he takes it
sometimes I'm
with him.
told too much fire. Just kidding. Kind of.
Well, unfortunately, so this is a funny thing here. Let me just check if he's still on. But yes, so Justin Bonds is running a space right now. And he has half the listeners we do, which I'm not gonna let that go to our head. But it was when we were on with Justin that the fire really went, because I love that guy. He's a good friend. I love his family. They're great people. And also a very hard-headed intellectual who does not mince words and just goes straight to it and has sometimes controversial opinions. And so fire meets fire is a recipe for F bombs flying around sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would like to mention something about um next week's thing, right? Um, so usually I try to, before I got a lot better about scheduling a million space things, but we do try to have the next week's subject done before, or figured out ahead of time. So uh, for next week's space, we're going to do it basically on the subject of why hasn't decentralized social media taken off? Now, don't say shit about this right now. Like, save it for next week, right? But everyone here, of course, is invited to come and speak on that if you want to, if you have something intelligent to say. But that's going to be the next one. Feel
You
free
know,
to. Yes.
Joel, I noticed you came, and I appreciated it, to the Bid Angels investor pitch cast today, where we featured basically what is Bid Angels is these cities around the world people pitch to get investments. There's 30 cities around the world. We have a bunch of different. We have 100 projects apply, and then maybe 10 to 15 pitch. The winner comes to Pitchcast. We do that once a week. And so this week was LitVM, the Litecoin Layer 2, that's being supported by like Litecoin Foundation and Charlie Lee and the broad community. And then next week on your topic, Joel, is the is going to be Own Network, which is a decentralized social media platform. So you might want to go to that pitchcast. Might give you some ideas for the space later in the day. It'll be at 8 a.m. PST. So like what, I don't know, 5-6 hours before this or
Well,
something.
and maybe we can
Um,
invite Own to this space.
Yes,
Yeah.
we could do
definitely.
that.
Yeah.
I will
We can do
go
that.
there and recruit. And that's next Thursday, correct?
Yep, every Thursday at 8 a.m. PST. You could follow Bid Angels. We'll post about it every week.
Yeah, I'll need to I have a meeting at 9 a.m. or an hour after,
Well,
so I should be able to make
Rock and
that.
I can invite Own because
Yeah,
yeah.
but I'll try to be on too, just to say, hey, we should come
No,
to that
we'll
space and
invite them
just
before Thursday.
yes, but
Yeah.
also come and chill
Yeah.
it. The best, my number one reason to go on, or my favorite thing to do on spaces is come in and airdrop in a shill for my own space and then leave. So I might as well do that. It's a little bit of a competitive
Hey,
sport sometimes.
speaking of airdrops, our space tomorrow, the aggregated space tomorrow is about airdrops and whether or not they're a positive or a negative for crypto projects, right? Like we know that early on they were great for community building, but recently they seem like they're more of a curse. So, that's sort of the topic of our pod or of the space tomorrow. So if there's anybody who has really strong feelings about that, you should definitely stop by.
And is that
Nicole parlayed
11
your
PS?
shill into a
Yeah, I
shill
did. Yeah,
and kept on top of it.
I
Yes.
A little double
did. Yeah,
entendre
I
there.
Listen, that's why she gets the big bucks, or should.
did.
But so that's at 8 PST tomorrow.
Is it okay? So it's at 3 p.m. UTC, which
Okay, that's all I need to know. It's 11 a.m. my time.
yeah,
I'll see if I can. I think I can. I think I can make that one. So I got a couple calendar events to put in, so I don't double schedule things. But yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on that one because I definitely lived through the airdrop era where everyone was airdropping everything. And then let's not forget the Bitcoin fork era, which is the epic airdrop era where you want a bunch of BSV, here you go, whether you like it or not. And so uh, also the Maya protocol, which again, tying back into the ThorChain theme and stuff. And I see Eric from Mocha, which supports Maya protocol, jumping on here. Hi. Um, the Maya protocol had a liquidity auction to distribute all its tokens in what could be considered airdrop-esque. And so I definitely want to bring that up as I think it's one of the modern airdrop-esque things that was one of the best. And so there's a lot of good and a lot of bad to talk about for the airdrops. I wouldn't, I'll be happy to come and shoot the shit tomorrow.
Would we call QuickSwap, because QuickSwap didn't have a sale, raised no funds, no ICO, turned down big investors like Sequoia, and we just gave the tokens to the community through liquidity mining? Is that like a long, that's been happening for 6 years now, and we still have, a good amount of tokens left. But is that a type of airdrop? I've been kind of
I
thinking
don't
about that
think so
lately.
because people had to provide liquidity to earn it. So, like, there was some level of risk, especially because it was like V2 liquidity. So, impermanent loss was a real thing, right? So, there was risk.
But I guess a lot of these chains do similar stuff like Blast. That was, you had to bring your liquidity over to get the airdrop. And in a lot of cases, modern airdrops do require some action.
Yeah, but I would say, okay, so some action is different, right? Like a claim is different because to do a claim, to do like a free claim, all you have to do is like prove that you had whatever token or coin in your wallet at the time, and once you do that, then you claim, but there's no risk involved. I would say that the element of risk has to be absent for an airdrop to be a true airdrop, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Joel, what do you think? What does anybody else think?
Well, we can't lose too much ammo for next week, but
Nah.
yeah, let's just as a random dodge to answer the question and actually just bring up who remembers Byteball? Do you remember that project back in the day? Um, no, Byteball. It actually
Vaguely.
it had a very limited supply, And so I remember it was one of the cryptos that had one of the highest per coin prices at one point. And you the way you got it was by signing. It was like an airdrop to Bitcoin holders. So if like Bitcoin holders, you signed that you own Bitcoin, you got it. And I just remember um, a friend of mine who I used to watch UFC fights with. He showed up like an hour late because he spent the entire day like collecting bite ball from all his old Bitcoin addresses and stuff. It's kind of funny. And with that, we have hit the 3-hour mark. Yay! Congratulations, everyone! You made it. Um, let's just do a round of shilling. Let's go from the bottom up this time. So, from the digital gold talk first, and then to Kenton. It's shill o'clock. I checked the watch. The clock strikes shill. Tell us what. Oh, did you just take off? He's just like, thanks, bye. Okay, Kenton, shill o'clock. Whatever you want to highlight, go for it.
So you can put me on the spot. Think of something. Well, Thorchain. Use Thorchain, people. It's the largest layer 1 to layer 1 DEX. There's no wrap tokens, all self custody. You heard the criminals use it, so it must be good. You know it works. Yeah, that's it. Oh, if you have Rune and you want to bond it, I'm a node operator. You can bond your Rune with one of my nodes. If you happen to be a TradFi investor, you can invest in my fund. My fund buys Rune and runs nodes. Yeah, there's my shilling. Thank you.
Perfect. And wouldn't it be great if you could direct people to use Thorchain on a dedicated interface instead of shady low life people like the Mocha app people?
Exactly.
Just kidding.
Or that
Just kidding. You
shady
guys are
Ledger
great.
Live or shady Trust Wallet or whatever. Yeah. There's Store Wallet, Thor Swap, Asgard X, Edge Wallet. Gosh, who else is there? OKX Wallet, Mocha. There's Leo Dex. Who else, man? And of course, if I don't say something, they're gonna get mad at me. But my brain is 100%, guys. But there's like a dozen more. They all have Thorchain integrated. So, yeah, lots of different ways you can access Thorchain.
Yeah, there's a few others coming soon that I don't know if I can announce, but yeah.
Thank you for having me.
I do have to run to the other spaces.
Yeah, jump the queue
Oh,
of no people. There's no one to
thanks.
jump the queue on. But yeah, go ahead.
Appreciate it. So yeah, I'll shill Quick Swap. I'm a co-founder of, and we did a fair launch. I think one of the most fair launches in modern crypto history. And we are launching on Base very soon. So if you're on Base, I saw Base Junkie on earlier. We'll be there and looking to do some partnerships and work with all the like local projects there and stuff. As we did on Polygon, we brought between LDA and QuickSwap, we brought over 1,000 projects easily, close to 2,000, I think, projects to Polygon over the years. And so we have a bunch of friends that are coming to base with us. And then LitVM is the Litecoin layer 2 that we're incubating, the only Litecoin layer 2. And again, supported by like Litecoin Foundation. One of the Litecoin Foundation members is on our team. Yeah, we just officially opened raise for that just today. So we're raising 5 mil at 50 mil on that. If anyone's interested, DM me, or QuickSwap account can help you with that also, or Nicole or any of us. But yeah, cheers, guys. And come to the next space if you want to keep doing spaces. You're having fun. Come on over to the next space. We're starting that right now, and it's in the jumbotron. If you scroll to the right, I put LitVM just now because Joel said we could chill. So, but then yeah, you can scroll for BitAngels. Thanks so much for having me again. One of my always one of my favorite spaces. This was a lot of fun, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks so much. And if I jump in, it might not be immediate, but I will try to make a token appearance at least.
Nice, awesome. See you there. Bye, bye, guys.
Okay, so then we got so I see like the Quai network is listening. Someone from Quai want to jump in just so you can chill it before we wrap up. In the meantime, I'll let Nicole, do you have anything specific to shill, or did Rock do it all for you?
No, actually, I do want to show something. So,
I run the LDA account. It's at Lunar Assets, and it doesn't have a lot of followers, but I make some really good jokes there. So if you want to follow that account, that would be awesome, and it would help me a lot. That'd be cool.
Is the Dash account following it?
It is, yeah. The Dash account
Okay,
does
good.
follow it.
I just
Yes.
wanted to make sure I didn't get
Yeah.
caught
No,
like
no, no,
being
no,
a
no. You
too
followed
rude.
it pretty. I think you recognized my humor pretty much right away.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Zano, I guess you're next and last, unless the quiet people want to come up.
Hey, so I guess we're Shield Sano at the start of the space, but some news I can share is that this month we are getting integrated into confidential layer. So if you ever held Bitcoin, for example, and just wish it that you could do it in a private manner with, for example, crypto node level privacy, um, this month you will be able to do it. So check out Sano and confidential layer.
Very nice. I guess that's it then. Quite account bounced, so we're good there. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. This is great. Remember, next week we're going to do it on um why did it escape my mind already? Social media, the Web3 social media. Why has none really taken off? So make sure to bring the heat. Please feel free to suggest anyone who should come and speak on that. Like, oh yeah, I'd love to speak, or I know this guy who's working on this thing, and it'd be great for this. So feel free to suggest. Make sure to share this space out, of course, because it was good and recorded. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
You
In the
should get
meantime,
Yeah,
yes,
sorry. You should get someone from the Bitcoin community to shield Nost, and also from the Bitcoin Cash community. They also have their own version, so that would be interesting.
yeah, I have to check. I have to ask with the Bitcoin Cash people because I have used a couple of their things, and I don't know if any current one is out there that they're shilling. But yeah, Nostr is a little. It's almost a little different than Bitcoin. There's like a different group of people involved, but I do know some of those people. But good suggestion. I should get them in
I
there.
like that the Bitcoin Cash one is fully on chain, so I think that's interesting. Looking forward to it.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys, enjoy. Jump into the other spaces if you want to. But in the meantime, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, peace.
Cheers.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.